What? Oh, there we go. Okay. For a second, I was like, did I pick the wrong background? I was momentarily confused, but I think I'm okay now. What? Hi, everyone, and welcome to my show. I'm Kip Davis. I'm a biblical scholar and a specialist in early Judaism and the Dead Sea Scrolls. And it's Friday, April the 3rd at 2 in the afternoon, Pacific time. So here we are, doing what we do every week. And I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Vish. Hi, Vish.
What's up? Hag Sameach
Uh,
for any of you who
oh,
celebrate Passover.
yeah. Hag Pesach
Yeah.
Sameach to you
Yeah.
and everyone, and a happy Good Friday to all
That's right.
y'all.
They do overlap this year.
We have a thing. The Christians have a thing too. I always, and this was something I was always conflicted about when I was an observant Christian, about saying Happy Good Friday.
Right. That does seem a little
I
weird. Yeah.
but it's a weird kind of certainly within evangelical Protestantism. I feel like the vibe and the tenor around Good Friday is a little odd.
Mm.
And I just, as an example of this, I every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, around lunchtime, I take my dog and usually a couple of other dogs out for a run in the woods. And I was driving past a big church, a big local church here in town, in independent, like, evangelical church, and there was tons of people there, right, for a Good Friday service. It looked like they had just gotten out, and they were all congregated, like, on the back lawn, and they had, like, a bouncy castle and, like, activities for the kids, and I was kinda like, that's interesting. I mean,
My guess is
it
that it's
is
probably just general Easter festivities and not like a specifically Good Friday thing. But yeah,
probably, but this is
it's
it's a
like bouncy
traditional
castles.
thing that, when I was a kid growing up in the city of Calgary, all the evangelical churches, booked out the Royal, Jubilee Auditorium, in town,
Okay.
and we all had, like, a citywide, somber, Good Friday service.
Mm.
I had to wear a suit that day, always,
Oh,
but, yeah. So
we already have a super chat from Tree Clam Tad for
oh,
5.
hey.
And he writes, I recognized Sean Ryan's podcast set in one of Dan McClellan's videos. I blame you for this.
Oh,
Kip.
listen, wait, thanks, Tree Climb Tad. Before getting on this, I have to share this with you, because I think this is kind of incredible. We were I was watching Bad Science Sunday last weekend, as I do every Sunday night, and everyone should subscribe to Bad Science Sunday and watch every Sunday night at 6:30
On
p.m.
the
Pacific.
channel
Because
Maya Adkisson.
yeah, I think you can find it
Specifically.
with just Bad Science Sunday too. But listen, I they did a Billy Marin misinterpretations was on, and they were reviewing a no, I'm trying to find the right button here. They were
While
reviewing
you do that,
a
Mish
video
Puppet.
from Billy Carson. Are you okay?
Noise
I
ending
think I'm
right.
good.
Mish Puppet.
Mishkapet. Good job. I need a do we need a mishkapet? Maybe we need one.
Hey,
Let's
there's Marin.
Where is that? There's Marin. Here we go.
It's not family, it's clan. Mishkapet.
You meant to say Mishpacha.
That he did. So, all right, here we go. So, now I've got these pictures here, So we can all see this, right? No, we can't. Now we can. We can all see this, right? And my co-host, Dr. Tapioca Weasel from Budget Scripture Saturday, which will be on tomorrow, pointed this out in the middle of their show. So we recognize this, right? If you've from our podcast last week or 2 weeks ago, our show 2 weeks ago, this is Sean Ryan's set.
Yeah.
This was, when Billy Carson was on Sean Ryan's show. But Vish, look at this one. Okay. This one is it oh, can I oops. Do I have to? I think I have to drop it and bring this up. Look at this one. So
Okay.
I would like to draw your attention. Like, the lamp looks the same. I gotta go back to this one first. Okay.
Yeah,
Just
and the
because.
wall of like
So
liquor.
yeah, so there's the wall of liquor. Pay close attention to what's in here.
Mhm.
You've got the wall of liquor. You've got this round
The red
lamp,
lighting.
the red light
Mhm.
there. You've got this lamp here, and you've got this bookcase happening here. Now look at this, because this is pretty interesting, I think. Look at this one. Okay.
Okay.
Look at the picture.
Yeah.
There's the lamp. Okay. Look at whatever the hell is going on this
Looks like
shelf here.
tchotchkes,
I'm zooming in on this. Like,
knickknacks,
I
thingamabobs.
I think Vandy pointed this out during their show, and I think he's 100% right about this. I think this is an AI generated virtual background.
Oh no. I was gonna say, because I
Okay,
don't really
at the
recognize
picture.
discernible shapes or faces or anything.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I
Ugh.
mean, the angles are not like there's something like I'll go back again, right? To this one
Mm,
here. Okay. For
goodness.
comparison, because it's like,
Yeah, and then the camera angle's totally different as well.
right? Yeah. Yeah. So, um yeah. So I don't know. That's fun. That's fun and interesting. But that's yeah. So Sean Ryan is what we're covering today. A couple weeks ago, we is that what is it? Do you hear? I feel like there's a dog moaning in the
Nope.
background here, I think. So nobody can hear it. Okay. Um if you hear the moaning in the background, pay no attention. That's just it's not even it's the other one. It's Nova. Oh, see, now
There's a
I've
doggo.
disturbed Dagon. Okay. So a couple weeks ago, we looked at this video, this appearance that Wes Huff made on the Sean Ryan show, where he talked for quite a while about the Dead Sea Scrolls, telling Sean Ryan all about the Dead Sea Scrolls, and this in promotion of his appearance at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. last weekend, where he led a tour group through their new exhibit of actual, genuine, like authentic Dead Sea Scrolls, not the modern forgeries. These were the real things on loan from the Israel Antiquities Authority. Which, if with ongoing current events, it's a choice to partner up with the Israel Antiquities Authority right now. It's not something that most institutions are doing for obvious
Well,
reasons.
when
But
your theology is that you are fighting an actual holy war and that
Yeah.
literal, real life, breathing human beings are somehow evil and either themselves demonic or led by demons or influenced by demons, then you have no moral
Such things,
qualms teaming up with an apartheid state.
such things are less problematic, I guess. But in any event, that's what's happening at the Museum of the Bible, and Wes Huff is, you know, leading a tour. He did his tour group through the Dead Sea Scrolls. So we didn't get very far in the video, and we spent all the time talking about discovery narratives. And I took the opportunity to read Eva Morochek's wonderful article on
Nice.
on
Yeah.
discovery narratives and in antiquity. She's well, I might read something else from her today, from her excellent book, the Jewish antiquity and the Jewish, I think it's Jewish antiquity and the literary imagination. It's all those
Mm.
words are in there. I always get them mixed up, but we might get to that today. I sent that article to my mom. She really, yes, it's a great article. It's a fantastic article. Answers in Genesis is getting a giant mosaic from Israel into, yeah. What are you gonna do? Ark Encounter, Museum of the Bible. Listen,
The Ark Encounter
it's
that has an HVAC system, just like Noah.
that's right. And this is something I struggled with when I did consulting work at the Museum of the Bible a number of years ago. In their relentless pursuit of academic credibility, they shot themselves in the foot right away. I think just by virtue of the optics and the implications that many of their temporary exhibits, the next stop for those temporary exhibits was the Creation Museum or the Ark Encounter in Kentucky, and I'm like, air conditioning was invented by Shem. Nice. Yeah. But anyways, before we dive into some of the things that Wes is going to talk about in the video today, and there's a couple things that I want to zero in on in particular. I think this gives us an opportunity to talk a little bit about literacy rates and how scholars track those in
Oh
antiquity.
boy.
So
Oh boy.
yeah.
Oh, this is
And
one of my
then
favorite areas because it seems like the popular consensus is among non-scholars, everyone was illiterate. And then you get into the scholarship and you're like, no, there's a whole spectrum of literacy. So
it's complicated.
weird. There's
Yes.
nuance.
So there is. And as with all things in scholarship, nuance is hard to communicate. I don't think Wes is a particularly good I don't think I'm a particularly good communicator of nuance, which is, why I'm here doing like 3-hour live streams instead of 20-minute sound bites. So but I don't think Wes is a particularly good communicator of nuance, but I'm not sure he's even trying, because
That doesn't get
just
clicks and
doesn't.
views.
Yeah, it doesn't. So
Hey, it's Redim.
€5 from Redim. Please release the snippet of Apologia's interview where he explains how they made the hierarchy of Star Wars lore as a separate video. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Actually, I should do that, because you're worried that nobody's going to sit through all the boring shit on my video to get to the good stuff with. I get it.
We know why people show up to
idea,
this
Redim.
channel. It's for Star Wars discussion.
Yes, that's it. So no, I like it. I will get on that. So, but before, and it's nice that you brought Apologia up, but because he brought this to my attention, because when he sent me this appearance of Wes's on Sean Rand's podcast in the first place. And then when I just jumped straight ahead. It's like a 2-hour interview, right? I just jumped straight ahead to the excuse me, the Dead Sea Scrolls stuff, because I mean that's really all I care about. So I did that, and then he informed that there was there was some stuff right at the beginning that maybe required some attention as well. So I think we'll start with that. We didn't do this last time, so we'll look at the introduction here of the show to start, and then we'll get into. Oh, I did want to say one other thing. The other thing I'd like to get into today is we'll talk a little bit more about the Psalms and Psalm scrolls, and the way those things were thought about in early Judaism. Vish and I did a whole stream about that a couple weeks ago, and then something else that we'll talk about is divine figures, I think, is the best way to describe it within early Jewish messianism, and what that kind of looked like, because these are things again that people promote without nuance, and when you do that very often, I think you end up miscommunicating more often than not. So but let's look at the first meeting first between Wes Huff and Sean Ryan. So,
Okay, this is the one that you told me we weren't starting with.
it is. This is it's like a 5-minute.
You said we were
one.
okay.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah, that's the one.
okay. It's fine. It's fine.
I'm sorry.
You're the
I'm
vice
sorry.
president of Apologetics Canada, where
Bad
you equip people.
communicator.
No,
Okay, hold on.
it's
First,
cool. They're labeled weird. It's all good.
yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So, but now before we start, maybe I'll just I included this bit because I have made this point a few times now over the last year or so that we've been looking at stuff from Wes Huff, but I think it's important to continue to track his public persona, the way that he is presented, the way that he's presenting himself in public relative to the topics that he chooses to discuss. So that's where we're starting here.
Okay.
Okay.
You're the vice president of Apologetics Canada, where you equip people with answers to tough questions about scripture, history, and faith. A Canadian Christian apologist, Reformed Baptist theologian, and one of the sharpest voices defending historical reliability of the Bible and our Christian faith.
Is the volume and speed okay? Because I would love to put this on
I think it
1.25,
is.
but I know that some people don't like it when I do that.
I think we can go 1.25. The volume sounds good to me. So one thing I'd like to say at the outset here that I have noticed in this show, and maybe a couple more recently, is that Wes, and I think this is wise on his part, has stopped advertising his affiliation with the University of Toronto as a PhD student. But I think it's important to continue to remind everybody that Wes is a PhD student at the University of Toronto. He's in his 9th year of his program, which is very long. The last I heard, he is still in the process of finishing, nearing the close to finishing his dissertation and defending it. But I also heard that like a year ago, and it doesn't seem like anything has changed. Just to remind everyone, as a PhD student, Wes so far has no publications on his CV, which in itself is also a little bit but quite a bit unusual. Most PhD students in my field, Wes is generally working within the same parameters, the broadly the same field that I did my PhD in, and everybody that I know in my field that I've worked with had at least one or two articles under their belt by the time they were getting ready to defend their PhD thesis. I had already written and published a couple of articles. I had written and published book reviews by the time I defended. So it is a little strange that that Wes has yet to publish anything. But this is what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for the opportunity to see Wes's academic chops and not this kind of stuff, right? So I continue to reserve judgment except for this, because this is all I have at my disposal, and this is not impressive. It's just not. So we wait, and we shall see. But he is no longer it seems he's no longer introducing himself in affiliation with his program of study at Tyndale Seminary at the University of Toronto. So
You approach skeptics with clarity, grace, and rock-solid evidence, making the case that the Bible isn't just a book of faith, it's the most scrutinized and preserved text in human history.
I want
A father to four, husband to Melissa,
too.
and most important...
Vish is laughing. But I want to say, I don't know that Wes does much confronting of skeptics. Feels like most of his public work is within very safe spaces, where he doesn't have to meet challenges from anybody, because he this too is probably smart on his part, because he is a PhD student who is regularly speaking very widely outside of his own expertise and doing a terrible job of it a lot of the times. And no shade for not getting that stuff right, because when you get to this level, you specialize narrowly, and there's reasons why I'm not running around giving lectures on the first Nicene Council, Church Council, or the Crusades or things like that, because I don't know anything about that shit. He confronts skeptics on Twitter, where all good discourse. Yes, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh man, that is a terrible place. Wes, can you grab Tree Climb Tads?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Wes does a lot of subtweeting Dan and then running away and deleting his YouTube community channel because of credible allegations of plagiarism. Yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah. So yeah, I took a screen cap of a post he made today, and reposted it on my community tab, just because the same sort of stuff, right? There's a tendency to get stuff wrong, either intentionally or otherwise. Accidental mistakes get made all the time by people who are not well versed in the field. Deleting all the content isn't really beating the allegations. No, it's not. So
yeah.
But yeah. Anyways.
Oop.
Oh, hey, good to see you, Dan. His recent lengthy tweet was clearly a subtle dig at my recent video, but he isn't going to directly respond. Because he doesn't want this. No, he doesn't want the smoke. No, none of it. Excellent. So, all right. Let's
You're a Christian.
after the introduction,
Thanks for being here.
which is pretty fun.
So, everybody that comes on the show gets a gift.
Okay.
So we got you a couple.
Okay.
First one, Vigilance Elite Gummy Bears.
Awesome.
Made in the USA. It's just candy. They're legal in all 50 states and legal in Canada, I'm pretty sure. So it's just candy.
Amazing.
And
That's
then
candy, guys.
Wait, that's not THC. Ugh, lame. Really
I wonder what
purpose-
Wes would do with it if it was. Would
Not
he?
use it.
Would he? He would.
That's
he would.
evil. Mm.
Oh well.
I got some buddies over at SIG. One of them happens to be the VP of marketing. His name's Jason.
Okay.
And I told him you were coming on. He got all excited.
Oh, man.
So we thought you might like this. We're not sure how you're going to get that back to Canada, but we'll help you figure it out.
Oh, my goodness, Sean.
So,
Okay. Explain to me what I'm looking at.
all right.
His first thought was candy and firearms.
Yeah. And apparently the VP of marketing at Sig Sauer is a big Wes Huff fan. So
Okay.
yeah.
You're looking at a Sig Sauer P365 Legion.
Okay.
So that is a carry. That's an everyday carry gun.
Okay.
It takes 17 rounds in the magazine plus one in the pipe for 18. That's their new optics line. They put those little slits in the front to help with recoil management. I'm not sure what's legal and what's illegal in Canada, so we're going to figure that out, and we're going to get you
Yeah, we might need to get creative, but
as close to that as we can.
man, that's
legally.
awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Can you
Hey,
pause
you're
it for a
welcome.
second?
Hey, shooter.
I have Sean. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. So
Fish,
that's
can you
amazing. I
pause
really
it
appreciate
for a
that.
second?
My pleasure.
Yeah. I got a couple.
Heck.
Is it not pause? Oh, there we go. Okay. When I watched this first time, I chuckled and I smiled because I feel like Wes gives like the consummate Canadian response to an American gifting him with like a handgun. Not that Canadians are gun crazy, right? Like it's just like lots and lots of I don't, but lots and lots of my friends and my family hunt, but I feel like that market for like assault weapons is maybe a little bit smaller, and I don't know, I chuckled, I smiled at at the
Ugh.
the uncertainty of what to do with a handgun as a,
That is
as a
so
Canadian who needs to get back home.
stereotypically American. It's like, oh, have some candy. Like, that's pretty cool. Like, I would
And a
love
gun.
gun snacks. And a gun. My goodness, dude. This is so
Yeah.
Things for you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we're gonna be
also
trading.
the fact that he goes, yeah, I don't know how you're going to get this back across the border. I'm not really sure what's
Oh.
legal. Do you think maybe you should have checked that before
maybe.
buying and presenting him
I'm
a firearm?
glad you paused it there, Vish. Look at the picture in the background behind him. So,
That means, yeah, Billy Carson absolutely generated that
yeah,
freaking background.
totally.
Look, those are identifiable shapes of human beings.
Yeah. It's true.
Goodness. Ugh.
All right.
So the first one I want to give you is, so my friends over at Dawson Blades, which is a forge that I hooked up with not that long ago, we collaborated on making a series of historically accurate with a modern twist blades named after.
Are they historically accurate, or is it a modern twist? Like, just pick one, dude. Come on. Also, Kip, to quote Deftones, go get your knife. Go get your knife.
Oh,
Because I think you should show
like
it
for
off
real?
while this is
I really
early
should.
Christians
Right.
who were influential individuals in the faith. So this is a recreation of a Roman Pugio dagger that we're calling the Irenaeus. And so he was an early church father, very prominent individual who wrote a series of writings called Against Heresies. Wrote against guys like the Gnostics and why they were off base. And so this is the second in our series. We have one out called the Augustan. This just launched this month. And that is a size accurate, historical, modern kind of twist on what a Roman centurion would have carried in the first century.
Bitcourse, this is an illegal weapons deal. And it damn follows that up. Wes might be done with his PhD if he wasn't so busy doing arts and crafts for podcast co-hosts.
Touche. Dr. McClellan, you are on fire today. So
Wes help brings out Sassy Dan.
He does.
So, did you get your knife?
I did. So
Tell us the story of the knife.
I will, but there was one here.
Camel out of the chat. Nothing says Christian forgiveness and turn the other cheek like 17 rounds of 9x19 millimeters. Well, it's 18 if you count the chamber.
So Noise Ending said, Dr. Davis, why don't you have a signature line of blades that are historically accurate with a modern twist? Well, to answer that question, I'm not that vapid and I'm not that talented. But my Mennonite soul doesn't know what to do with an apologist making weapons with Church Fathers Day. Oh, I do. Heretic. Right? We should talk about that in a little bit. But how long has it been? It's been just a little over a year. A good friend of mine who doesn't do a lot of content creation anymore, but he used to. Ricky Brock, otherwise known as Captain Dadpool, is an amateur blacksmith. He likes to make blades for his friends. He made a really nice one for Dan around the same time, I believe. And he sent me this one, which I quite like very much. I actually use it like almost daily, just because it's such a great knife. But this is something that he forged for me. I especially love the touch on the handle, because he asked me before he sent it, just out of the blue, if I could tell him what my favorite Dead Sea Scrolls manuscript was. So I told him it was 4QMA, 4Q491, which is a copy of the War Scroll. And he found a picture and embedded the text of the manuscript in the handle. It's not coming up really clearly, but trust me, it's badass. It's an awesome knife. It is, of course, my favorite knife. And thank you, Ricky. I hope you're watching sometimes. So if you do watch, I hope you're doing well, my friend. But yeah, he needs to give someone a whip named Augustine, since he said God gets angry with you if you fail to whip your enslaved folks. You just have to make sure you whip them with love in your life. It's very true. But this is like, seriously, this is pretty absurd, honestly. And I just want to, we talked about this. I'm going to share this first, Vish.
I almost forgot. Kip, can you re-display your knife for a moment?
Yes.
Okay.
What are we looking at?
Stop hitting the wrong button. That's a knife.
Oh, it's a knife.
That's a knife. Okay, there. Had to do it.
I see
legally
you played
obligated to quote Crocodile Dundee.
Knifey spoony before. So,
okay.
All right. I want to look at this. Is he finished giving him the knife yet? Is that part of
this? Is awesome.
Okay.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
He's very
and I also have for you
beautiful
a page from a 1576 Geneva Bible.
All right.
So
yes.
that's what year? 1576. So the first Bible that was brought over to the United States by the Pilgrim was the Geneva Bible. Most people think it's the King James Bible. So King James Bibles were brought over, but the Geneva Bible was actually the Bible of the Puritans, because they considered the King James a state developed Bible.
Really?
And so when they came over, they brought Geneva Bibles. And so
That's what we need in our modern
Hey.
climate is a state-developed Bible. Nothing could go wrong.
No, but listen,
Apologia
I
comment.
I
Dividing soul and spirit. Joints and marrow. Westhoff's swords judge the thoughts and attitudes of your heart, per the scriptures.
per the scriptures. If this is true, I think that's pretty cool, actually. That
I don't.
the first Puritans that they
tell you
preferred the Geneva Bible as opposed to the King James Bible because they were
Giving. Go ahead.
okay. Go ahead.
Okay, well,
No,
I was gonna say that the Geneva Bible, like, as a gift would be cool. I love, historical texts and things like that. It's very cool. Taking a single page out of a
it's not
Geneva Bible?
I'm not talking about the gifting stuff. I don't care about any of that shit, and I think it's so stupid. What I'm talking about is the point he was making about how the Puritans wouldn't use the King James Bible because they saw it as a state Bible. Yeah, if that's true, I mean, that's pretty cool. I kind of like that. But this is what apparently apologetics gifting is, right? It's weapons and artifacts. I guess.
I mean, guns, knives, and scripture is a pretty
yeah.
on the nose way to communicate
antique
the state of
scriptures,
evangelical
antiquity.
Christianity right now. So
Yes.
good job, guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really beating the charges there.
that's one of the first. They started printing, I believe, in 1560, and then that's the 1576 one, which was their kind of second round.
Man, thank you.
Yeah, of
This is
course.
getting framed and put in the studio.
Getting framed.
This is
The
All
reason that irritates me so much is that there are so many ancient texts that are preserved up until the point where some private collector or some rando gets a hold of it. In order to
Yes.
make money, they start taking individual pages out and destroying the
Yes.
text. And then
We
they
talked
just get
about
lost,
this.
or somebody destroys it by accident, or it's whatever happens to it, it's damaged. And then that's lost forever. So
Dude.
giving someone an actual leaf from a centuries old text, that is offensive to me as like
Garbage. Yep.
someone
it
who's
totally is.
interested in history.
Do you remember having Erin Thompson on last year? She came on. She's the professor of art crime at CUNY, New York, and she came on to talk about
SUNY. Yeah.
So she talked about this, right? She talked about this process of taking apart codices and selling individual leaves, individual pages, and the only reason why antiquities dealers do this is because you can make like 1,000 times more money selling a book that way than you can if you sell it intact. So it's garbage.
Like, there was one of the oldest, most well-preserved codices of the Hebrew Bible called the Crown of Aleppo, and it was there for centuries and centuries, and then all of a sudden it goes missing. And when it's recovered and sent over to be preserved, it's missing a huge ass chunk because people were like, now we're just going to sell off pages. And it's like we're trying to reconstruct one of the oldest Hebrew Bible manuscripts because there are variants in like the pointing or the word choice. And it's like, we were able to reconstruct parts of it based on like other writings and things people had quoted from it, but there's just a whole chunk that's just missing now when it was
managed to
in
recover
one freaking piece.
like a few. They've managed to recover a few of the plates, but yeah, like it's like tons of it is just missing. So you can put that down now. But this we looked at this on an episode of a Budget Scripture Saturday a couple months back. Nitty and the Weasels and I. So this is Dawson Knives since 1973, the year of my birth, actually. So they have teamed up with Wesley Huff. Apologia is a curated collection of reimagined artifacts from the age when the early Christian martyrs shaped the foundations of the faith, conceived in collaboration with Wesley Huff. Each piece is named for a father of the church and inspired by the historical arms of their era, not replicated, but transformed through Dawson's elite craftsmanship into modern expressions of legacy and devotion. I don't know. There's just something. So the first one was Ignatius, forged in homage to one of the earliest Christian martyrs. Ignatius Main's Gladius is a study in conviction craftsmanship and an uncompromising purpose, inspired by the iconic Roman gladius style carried through the 1st and 2nd centuries. This piece is reimagined through Dawson's modern mastery, engineered not as a relic, but as a sovereign expression of precision and power. Nearness to the sword is nearness to God. So,
Oh,
like,
my lord. Did I just hear you say closer to the sword is closer to God?
nearness to the sword is nearness to God. But do you know what he's saying there? He's a martyr.
I can't shake
Like,
the Roman and Crusader like vibes this is giving off.
that's
I-
what
I'm-
that's what I think it's important to point out here, though, that this is absolutely twisting what Ignatius is expressing when he says that. He's talking about
He's
martyrdom.
about to be murdered by a sword,
He's
right?
yes.
not a
he
sword.
is. He's not going out and killing people with it.
To God. My goodness.
It's this is something, right?
I hate this so
Showcasing
much.
martyrdom with like stabby objects is not, I don't know. It feels like it's maybe not the way.
I just remembered something I heard once. Some guy said, live by the sword, die by the sword.
Mm.
Yeah, he was probably
Mhm.
just some rando. Anyway,
Who did say that?
I don't know. Some
That
guy.
was, yeah. Okay. This is a $575 knife that that Wes gave to Sean Ryan. But I'm pretty sure I think he gave him the Irenaeus, right? It's
Amazing.
same. Wow. There we go. So that was the gift exchange.
I can't. Next, when they launch an actual next crusade, because the other ones almost didn't fail, they're
Mhm.
just going to do it unironically.
Yeah.
Wow. Lex Lotta writes, "Blessed are the weapon makers, for they shall get $399.95 from Trad Christian Gigachads."
Yes. Yes, they shall.
Okay.
Martin's
Yeah.
all right. Yeah. Blessed be the
Fathers of
knifers.
faith. Hang on, let me put on my announcer voice.
Okay.
Celebrate the fathers of faith by purchasing modern interpretations of the weapons that killed them. Without a hint of irony. I love that.
No,
Someone else in the chat
not
was
a
like,
hint.
Sapphire's dead. Seriously.
Wow.
Okay. Back to the other video we were gonna watch. Is
Yes,
this one less
and the
brain
times
damage
you got
and
the
soul crushing?
you got the
Who knows?
you got the timestamp there. I think 2 minutes 29 seconds. I said right. And then the first place to stop here is at like 3 minutes and 40 seconds.
Okay. Just flail wildly
I'll
or
flail wildly and yell. Yes.
I think these are
probably the most important archaeological discovery of the 20th century.
He's talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls.
And they shed so.
Oh, by the way, Joel's here to tell us about
Oh,
your mistakes.
hi, Joel.
We have a live fact checker.
Yes. Live fact checker. Love it.
Good to see you, Joel.
It really is.
Okay. Oh. Captain Lurker's like $2,400 worth of Sig Sauer, $20 worth of a knife. Thanks, bro. Is that really how much that particular Sig goes for? Because holy...
I have no idea. If somebody knows, I have no idea. But
and also, Dan's just here to say nuh-uh,
nuh-uh.
which, as we know, ends and wins every argument.
Every
Just
argument.
nuh-uh.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
So much light on ancient Judaism leading up to the time of Jesus, in understandings of different Jewish thought and practice, but also every book of the Bible, apart from 2 of the Old Testament, was discovered in these. And some of them were so well preserved that what they did is they pushed back our understanding of the text of the Bible close to 1,000 years, sometimes even further than that. Because for a long time, our copies of particularly the Hebrew Old Testament, so we had translations, like I've referred to the Greek translation of the Old Testament, those have existed for a long time. It's called the Septuagint, is one of the main streams of the Greek translation of the Old Testament. Most people in the time of Jesus were speaking and reading Greek if they were able to read, because that was the lingua franca, the language.
Okay. Yeah. Let's stop it there. There's a few things going on there that to cover right at the outset. What text of the Bible are we talking about here? Because that's one of the things that we see on full display with the Dead Sea Scrolls, is that the text, the textual picture of the transmission of biblical texts at the time of Jesus, in the 1st century BCE and the 1st century CE, is complicated. It's messy. Something we touched on a little bit the last time we looked at this video is what even are we talking about when we're talking about a biblical text? Because I think it's important to point out as well, these are terms that we have invented and provided to the artifacts that we are collecting as scholars. When the first scholars were sifting through the material, the thousands and thousands of fragments that comprise the Dead Sea Scrolls, they're the ones who set these classificatory labels on them: biblical text, non-biblical text. And at the time that they did this, it was a form of shorthand of convenience, working from what is known to what is unknown. So readily, in the first place, identifying things that we recognize, most of which were texts from the Bible. So that's how they got classified. The unfortunate part of this is that there is a certain sense of canonical hegemony that accompanies that. By assigning certain texts within early Judaism to this category as biblical, you're providing a way of thinking about them that might not necessarily have aligned with the way ancient people viewed these texts. Like, one of the things that we see from Qumran is that they have a fairly more broad, more dynamic understanding of, there's certainly no canon, there's no Bible. There's something like, I think, what we can safely call scripture, groupings of sacred texts, texts that they viewed as especially important and significant, texts that they wanted to read and scrutinize on a deep level. But there was a wide range of these sorts of texts, not all of which we find in the Bible. So that's something at the outset. Now, he said something else here that, and we're going to talk about some of this for a little bit here. He talks about copies that were discovered. Only 2 of the books in the Hebrew Bible were not represented in any way in any of the manuscripts that were discovered in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I think I should say this throughout this conversation when Wes talks about the Dead Sea Scrolls, I believe he's speaking of the manuscripts that came out of the 11 caves of Qumran. When I talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls, I like to make clear that this is an umbrella term that covers all manuscript discoveries from the Judean desert. So that's not just manuscript discoveries at Qumran. It also includes manuscript discoveries at Matzadah, at Murabat, at Nachal Hever, and Wadi Seir. I feel like I'm missing Wadi Dalia. There's a bunch of sites. Qumran is the most prominent of these. When we speak of the Dead Sea Scrolls, that's mostly what people are talking about. Wes is never explicit about this, and because of this, it creates some problems with how he frames this conversation that he has with Sean Ryan as he continues. This is one of these things where I wish people, when they speak about the scrolls, are more explicit, because where you found this stuff is really important to how you're going to understand and interpret the information that you have as a result of the finding. So just once, I want Wes to talk about what the Jeremiah fragments do for our understanding of the textual history of that book. Right? Yeah. That would be something. It's
for the audience.
There are 6 copies of the book of Jeremiah in the Dead Sea Scrolls. 2 of them look like they're relatively close to the Masoretic text. One of them I would challenge as a so-called Proto-Masoretic text. It also has this gigantic secondary scribal insertion, which may have been not an original part of the book of Jeremiah. I think there's a good case for that. The other copies are varied in terms of their agreement with the MT in particular, but 2 of them also align with the Septuagint in arrangement and text type. They're Hebrew copies of the text that was behind the Greek translation, the Septuagint, of the book of Jeremiah. The book of Jeremiah in the Septuagint is 12.5% shorter than the Masoretic version, and in a dramatically different arrangement. Scholars are basically agreed that this was an earlier version of the book of Jeremiah that was expanded at a later period of time. I think this is something that happened probably in the 3rd century BCE. I think we can get pretty close to delimiting a date on that. I've talked about this a little bit before. Vish and I did a stream where I talked a lot about the manuscripts and the text history of the book of Jeremiah. I encourage you to check it out, where we get right into this and we show what the differences are between the texts that we have represented in the Septuagint and the Masoretic text, and the manuscript evidence for that. And the thing about it is that in the caves of Qumran, in cave 4 at Qumran, they had both versions. it's one of those things, right? It's one of
That's
those
one of
things.
those. It feels often like Christian evangelicals are like, oh, there were some ancient texts, probably tablets, and then we got the Dead Sea Scrolls, and then all of a sudden it's the Masoretic text. And they don't really allow
Yes.
for any intermediary steps. And because
No
I'm not
intermediary
as well
steps.
read on the subject, I went specifically to listen to Emmanuel To talk about Proto-Masoretic texts in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And like, obviously anybody who's heard him lecture, it's just a rich, wealth of information. So it's
He wrote the book
frustrating
on
to
it,
hear
literally.
people who have studied this for most of their life and directly interacted with these fragments and these copies talk so eloquently about their place in the line of history and development, and then just are completely ignored or dismissed by apologists because it doesn't fit like their theological aims. So tired sigh.
Exactly. Tired sigh. Okay. So text types, but I want to focus in on something else that he talked about here. He shifted right away, and I'll just read. I've got the transcript here in front of me. I'll read back what he says. The scrolls pushed back our understanding of the text of the Bible close to 1,000 years, sometimes even further than that, because for a long time, our copies of particularly the Hebrew Old Testament, and then he pauses there and shifts gears and says, so we had translations, like I've referred to the Greek translation of the Old Testament. Those have existed for a long time. It's called the Septuagint. It's one of the main streams of Greek translation of the Old Testament. So first of all, and this is a problem, and this is something I pointed out to some friends today on the basis of a post that he made on his community tab of his YouTube channel. When Wes talks about the Septuagint, as far as I can tell, he's only talking about it as the Greek translation of the Old Testament. What he's never doing is talking about it, as most scholars who talk about such things do, as a text type, as a witness to an earlier stage, in many cases, an earlier stage of the biblical text before the Masoretic text, before those texts that that survive in the Masoretic text. And it's a really important omission, because if Wes exercised even a sliver of curiosity about the Septuagint, the contents of the Septuagint, and the scholarship on the Septuagint, not just from a translational perspective, but from an exegetical perspective and from a text history perspective, like that is a rich vein of information regarding how the texts of the Bible developed in this crucial period in the Second Temple period. So that's the Septuagint. But then he says this: most people in the time of Jesus were speaking and reading Greek if they were able to read, because that was the lingua franca, the language of the day. Now, there's a couple ways to look at this, and I'm not sure if this is intentional or not. But when he says most people at the time of Jesus were speaking and reading Greek, no, it provides the impression that reading Greek was widespread in early Judaism. He qualifies this a little bit and says if they were able to read, and that is a very, very important point. And it's a bit of a pet peeve of mine and a hobby horse to talk about who was reading in the late Second Temple period and what they were reading. in the late Second Temple period. So I want to talk a little bit about that today before we move on with some of what's next in this video. I'm drawing from here. Let's see. I'll show this if I can get there. What page am I on? Sorry, I'm just here we go. So I am drawing from this book today. This is Language and Literacy in Roman Judea, a study of the Bar Kokhba documents by Michael Wise. Mike Wise did a second PhD at the University of Chicago in I was finishing just as I was in Norway. So I think he finished in 2013 or 2014, and this is his PhD dissertation. The subject of his PhD dissertation was a review of literacy rates in Roman Palestine in the first century, in effectively the early second century CE, on the basis of an exhaustive study of the documents from the Cave of Letters in Nachal Hever. The Cave of Letters was an important archive. This was there we go. I'll get my bookmarks here. So the Cave of Letters was a cave in the cliffs at Nachal Hever, where Jewish rebels were holed up, members of Simon Bar Kokhba's resistance. They were holed up there, waiting essentially for the hammer to drop and for the war to end. This was the Second Jewish War. The people, we know quite a bit about the people who were actually holed up inside this cave, because they had with them quite a large archive of documents, letters, contracts. There's a handful of literary texts, but the really important material, the really important stuff, is actually these documentary texts, these personal letters and contracts that they had with them, because they identify not just the people there in the cave, but they also tell us a great deal about Jewish life for these people. It needs an important qualification here, is that the people who were holed up in the Nachal Hever were from En Gedi, and they were wealthy people from En Gedi. They were what is typically called householders. So these were members of the upper class in Judean society, which in part explains why they had so much written material with them. Because one of the things that we certainly see when studying literacy rates in Judea and almost any time in antiquity, is that this was an activity of wealthy people, of well-placed people, of people in corridors of power, of the higher ups. So most people, life was difficult enough in antiquity that for the vast majority of people, it was only everything you could do to stay alive and stay healthy. There wasn't a lot of time for leisure activities like learning how to read or write. Writing materials were expensive. They were costly. Most people didn't have the sorts of disposable income to be able to acquire written documents, written pieces of literature, these sorts of things. And as a result, only a tiny handful of the overall population was able to read and write. One of the things so Mike Wise's study is the first one since Catherine Hetcher published her monumental work in 2001 or 2002. Catherine Hetcher undertook a comprehensive review of literacy rates in Roman Palestine in the first century CE, and she came to the conclusion that probably 5 to 10% of the male population in Judea was able to read or write, meaning that like 95% of the total population could not. So Wise has attempted to refine her findings and has done so through this very meticulous, close review of the Bar Kochba materials. So he explains here what he's doing and why he's doing it. And I thought it would be useful just to read a little bit of this because it's really interesting how the work is done in terms of discovering how many people read and wrote in antiquity. So I'm just going to start here. Well, damn it, sorry. In this at the bottom of the page here in this this last paragraph. So the approach that Mike Wise takes is to examine signature literacy in antiquity. The use of signature literacy is well established as a way of taking some measure of the past. First, it is also a step in the direction, further, he says it is also a step in the direction of taking the ancient world on its own terms. Greco-Roman testimony indicates that the ability to write one's name was sometimes considered the boundary between the lettered and the unlettered. A famous example unearthed by Herbert U.T. may illustrate. From 184 to 187 CE, Pateus, son of Pateus, was the town clerk in the vicinity of Ptolemais Hormu, Egypt. His record-keeping functions were significant, employing several professional scribes. He was overseeing this whole group of scribes. Yet Pateus was, by modern standards, an animate oxymoron, an illiterate scribe. Here's I don't remember where it's in the footnote here. I can't pull it up, but here's a text about this. He practiced his signature from time to time. We have one of his practice sheets. He traced the formula Petaus Comogrammatus Epidedoka 12 times in a most awkward hand. At line 5, he made a mistake, omitting the first letter of the verb. From there to the end of his exercise, he invariably omitted the letter. On the verso of the sheet, he wrote the sentence twice from memory and made an incredible botch of it. No description would do it justice. On one occasion, Petaus dealt with a complaint sent to him for verification. A town clerk in his vicinity, Ischirion, was being denounced as incompetent to do his job and charged with illiteracy. Petaus investigated and cleared Ischirion of the charge, offering as explanation his judgment. He is not illiterate, for he countersigns the documents he submits to his superior and other writs of the village clerk's position. Yoti wryly summarized the situation. Petaus and Ischirion are in precisely the same position. Both of them town clerks, both of them illiterate, both of them masters of a single short sentence, which they laboriously pen at the bottom of the documents. Presumably, Petaus knew that his assessment would satisfy his superiors and settle the matter. Hence, we learn a working definition of literacy in Roman Egypt. Unlike most modern definitions of literacy, the ability to write one's name was a touchstone at home in the ancient world. The study of signatures is therefore contextually appropriate, and it is useful. In fact, to assess practical literacy, the study of signatures is even more useful for the Greco-Roman world than for the medieval and early modern periods of the West. The reason is simple. Unlike the people of later Europe, very few in that earlier world learned to read without also being able to write. On the contrary, their educations in literacy began with writing and were expressly designed to give a person the ability to sign his or her name, even if literacy progressed no further, as for many, it did not. So, do you hear what I'm getting at the outset here? Within antiquity, if you could sign your name, that qualified you as literate by
Well,
their standards.
I have some fun little news for you. As someone
What's
who is
that?
a genealogist, um, people all the way up into the 1900s
Yeah.
in like Mexican parish records were not literate by this definition. Because I have read so many records, both civil and church records, where the person writing the entry or the local magistrate or whatever, he says, I signed for this person because they didn't know how. And then he signs his name. So
Mhm.
this idea of like, oh, everyone's literate at a certain point, or most people are literate at a certain point in history, that is not true. And
No.
even with some schooling, in various Western countries, the ability to sign your name is still not just taken for granted. So would you say like, oh, these people, they were so primitive and illiterate. They just didn't know what they were doing. They couldn't do it. Like, what? This is ridiculous. And like some of the people in chat have really had some good stuff going on talking about maybe their conversational
Johnny
language is different
Cash.
from the liturgical languages. And that's the thing,
Mm.
is like this, I don't know where this idea came from, that Hebrew became some mystical lost language that no one knew about or could pronounce or speak or spell or write until some revival, 150 to 200 years ago. Hebrew texts have always been read in Jewish ritual practice. This is
Yes.
not a foreign thing. People did not suddenly forget how to do it. It is not a mystery. It is it's not a conundrum. I don't know where this idea came from. And I keep hearing it even in circles that should know better.
No, it's true.
It's
It's
frustrating.
very true. And yes, it is also very frustrating. So, for Wise's study, obviously, what we want to discover is not just general literacy, as in one's ability to sign their own name by by the ancient standard. What we want to discover are people who could actually read literature at a minimum, and potentially write literature. I would say those are the ability to do one, even in today's world of hyper literacy, where the vast majority of people can read literature. I would say there's not that many who are able to write it competently. So this is nothing new. They are not always the same skill, or that close to each other. But and in antiquity, the numbers are even more stark. So
Hmm.
the way that Mike Wise went through his project then was to examine exhaustively the contents of the documentary materials recovered from Bar Kokhba, and to analyze the signatures of everybody who signed any sort of document, and to assess these and to analyze these. and in doing so, the manner of doing so is essentially through paleography. So he talks about this here, where he classifies texts are classified,
Yay!
signatures are classified, writing styles are classified into 4 groups. So I'll just read. Yes, we've got some pretty pictures here at the bottom and on
I love
the
this stuff because
next page.
paleography is pretty much a requirement if you are a professional genealogist or if you do
Right.
genealogy for long enough.
Yeah.
So I get very excited
Yeah.
with this stuff.
I love this stuff too, because paleography is pretty much required if you're a professional paleographer as well. So it's
Yeah.
it's very useful. So here he talks about these 4 categories developed by this scholar by the name of Cribiore, who came up with a system of categorizing hands on the basis of apparent skill in an effort to determine levels of literacy. 4 categories are suggested, he says at the bottom of the page here, differing somewhat from Cribiore's, because here the writers in view are almost exclusively adults, not students. Her descriptions of appearance of the hands largely carry over. Figures 1.2 to 1.5 exemplify each type. Level 1 is what Wise is calling an alphabetic hand. And we see that in figure 1.2 there, representative level 1 alphabetic hand from Papyrus Yadin 44. This is the signature of Eleazar ben Eleazar. So level 1, or the alphabetic hand, is the habitation of the slow writer, represented by Eleazar ben Eleazar, the first to sign Papyrus Yadin 44. On that long ago day in Engedi, he could sign his name, but when faced with a sophisticated literary text, his year or 2 of schooling would leave him essentially helpless. Similarly, people such as Joseph ben Eleazar of Papyrus Yadin 46, possessed of an unpracticed hand, would fare poorly in any serious encounter with a classical Hebrew opus. He exemplifies level 2. So that would be this one here, figure 1.3, representative level 2 unpracticed hand. So this is an alphabetic hand, is somebody who's essentially able to sign their name, and that's it. A level 2 hand, an unpracticed hand, is someone who can write out the alphabet. They know all the letters of the alphabet, and they can write all of the letters and string those together, in some instances, into actual words, of course, including their own names. Only with the practiced hand of people such as Eleazar ben Katusian, known to us from many texts, including Papyrus Yadin 15, do we encounter an individual who, shaped by years of study, memorization, and copying, could read fluently. This is level 3, the literary literate. And you see that exemplified in figure 1.4 there at the top of the page. You can see very clearly the fluidity of the motion in the way in which he's making his letters. He knows what he's doing. He's not, hesitantly scratching the handful of letters that he does know onto the papyrus. Professional scribes comprise the final category, level 4, of whom Simon Bar Yosef, the final signatory of Papyrus Yadin 44, is a parade example. We particularly want to distinguish scribes, it will be recalled, when analyzing Hebrew signatures and contracts. So what Wise has essentially done is looked at all the material counted, analyzed, and classified all the individual hands according to these 4 categories, right? An alphabetic hand, someone who basically can sign their name. An unpracticed hand, somebody who knows the alphabet and can string together a couple of words, but that's it. Probably can't read any of them really, except for maybe 1 or 2. A literary literate, who's somebody who's not a professional scribe, but basically has sufficient enough training that they can actually write. They can read fluently and they can write fluently. And those are all distinguished from scribes. I, in my own work, have challenged some of this a little bit, in that I think the level 3 literary literate hand is perhaps the most evident. I'll qualify this. It's a little bit different when looking at documentary texts as opposed to literary texts. And so people understand what I mean when I talk about the difference between those two things. These are copies of literature, so these are works, things like stories and poetry, legal material like biblical laws and sermons and things of that nature, wisdom literature, all this stuff classified. This is what literature is. Documents are contracts and lists and letters, and there is a difference when examining literature, literary texts, and analyzing those for scribal skill. I will say I have a tendency to distinguish professional scribes from what I call scribblers. Professional scribes are people who have been trained and are employed. It's their vocation to reproduce texts. I'm not convinced that you need to be able to necessarily know how to read to read literature, I think most scribes did know how to read. I'm not convinced they had to, though. And I'm not convinced that scribes had to be skilled writers. And we recognize those hands because they're beautiful. The focus is on the art of the reproduction. They are exceptionally legible. They look professional. I tend to distinguish those from what I call scribblers' hands, which are very fluid. They're always writing fast because they know what they're doing. But these are clearly not texts written by professional scribes for circulation amongst a broad group of people. These look more to me like the products of personal use and personal study. These are the texts of scholars who are writing their stuff out, quickly, creating out of their brains, or, reproducing texts that they have on hand with embellishments and insertions and changes, because they're writers. Do you understand? Am I making sense, Fish? Is this is
Yeah.
you tracking with this? Okay, that's good. So I'll make that qualification. So what Mike Wise has done is he's taken all this information and then he's crunched the numbers and come up with some figures, which he thinks represents literacy rates in Roman Palestine. And he helpfully has divided this up into language for us. First and foremost, his discovery, actually, there's a chart back here. If we look at this one, it's pretty small, but you can,
Yeah.
I'll embiggen it as much as I can on this screen. Actually, let's just do this and we can go across here. So
There
if you
we
look
go.
at what we have here, So we have literacy levels by language. These are principles. So these are the people who actually wrote these are the scribes effectively, or the literary literates who actually wrote out the contracts or the letters. And then on table 5.4, just below it, are the literacy levels of the signatories. So the witnesses, the principal is the person who wrote the text, who also signed the text. And then all of these documents have witnesses with them too. So they're signed by multiple people. So he's tracking literacy levels of the principals in each language and then of witnesses in each language. And you can see here, he has them also helpfully listed according to sex or gender. Sorry. So you have, if you look, and he's got them listed according to the 4 categories. Number 1 is alphabetic literate. Number 2 is an unpracticed hand. Number 3 is a literary literate. Number 4 is a scribe. Okay. So if you look
you
here,
have a quick link to this paper so we can read it?
this is a book, I'm afraid.
Dang it.
So I
Do you
don't
have
have a link.
Can you give me the info and I'll go hunt it down and see if there's places to buy it or get it in a library or whatever?
Oh, this is it's language and literacy in Roman Judea, I think is the name. Language and literacy in, I think that's what it's called.
Okay.
Michael Owen
Got
Wise. Did you find it? Okay.
Yep.
It's probably a pretty expensive book, but it's part of the Anchor Yale reference series, which is really good. So, but so here he's got them everything broken down by language, by sex, and by skill. So if you look, for example, and these are just signatures, right? Of the principles, you have 8 in total in Hebrew. 6 were male, 2 were female, 2 were illiterate, 2 were unpracticed, 4 were literary literate, and there were no professional scribes among that group signing in Hebrew. In Aramaic, you have 13. 8 males, 5 females, 4 were illiterate, 12 unpracticed, 8 literary literate, and 5 scribes in that grouping. It's interesting, I think, to note that none of the scribes are signing in Hebrew, just Aramaic, and here you have in Greek a total of 7. 5 males and 2 females, but yeah, they're not great sample sizes. That's true. Yeah. But only a single. The only ones signing in Greek are the professional scribe and somebody else who's literary literate. So you have a couple of documents in Nabatean, and you know a female signatory amongst that group. So these are the principles, mind you, right? So these are the people who were the first one to sign the document. And then he's got in this other list all the witnesses, the hypographies, and the subscribers. I'm not going to go through all the numbers here. The one thing I really wanted to focus on, I just want to point out, this is just from a single pool of people from this city of En-Gedi who were holed up in the caves at Nachal Hever. We know that they were wealthy landowners, which I think it's interesting too, that this is a cross section of elite Judeans and their literary skills. Mike Wise says that the population of En-Gedi at the time was, I think he said 200 people, in total.
Itty bitty.
The population of all of Roman Palestine was, I think the estimate is around 1 million inhabitants in the whole region.
Whoop.
And in the first century, right? So it's a very small cross section. But what I want to draw attention to is some of his conclusions here, specifically with regards to the stuff written in Greek. I'll just read what he says here about Aramaic. What many scholars of our period have argued for Aramaic being the most widespread language in daily use in Judea. And Table 1.2 supports that view. It shows that when Judeans were given an opportunity to sign text composed in that language, they signed in Aramaic. If they could sign at all, with overwhelming frequency. So what that says is that anybody who's learning to write at, the lowest level almost certainly is learning to write in Aramaic. And a similar percentage of the witnesses did the same. These numbers are much higher than the corresponding numbers for Judean signatories of Hebrew, Greek, and Nabatean contracts, and in themselves argue for the dominance of Aramaic as the ordinary Judean language of signature literacy. This conclusion is reinforced by a point noted at the outset of this study, but worth repeating. When Judeans were unable to sign any non-Aramaic contract in its own language, overwhelmingly, they signed in Aramaic. 94 of 95 for a 98.9% return. So I just remind you that Wes was telling us that most people were speaking and reading Greek, and they were not in Roman Palestine. They weren't. It gets interesting, though. Even more interesting, I would say, when we start to look at what this looks like for Greek literature.
Literally, Wes just making a vibes-based assertion. Pretty typical for an apologist, though.
Very typical. Okay. So one of the problems with Mike Wise's book is that he's an incredibly dense, verbose writer. Sometimes it's quaint, but there's a lot of words in his and that's coming from me complaining about a lot of words. So
there's a little video clip that somebody sent me, and it's Duke Nukem, and he's like, "That's a lot of words. Too bad I'm not reading them."
So I wanted to read some of this about Greek education and training in Greek language in the first century Judea, Roman Palestine. As we have seen, the process for acquiring an ability to animate ancient literature in either Greek or Hebrew was very intense. For most people, in fact, more or less all-consuming for a significant stretch of one's youth. It was no mean feat to learn to read in either literary language, and only a relatively small number ever accomplished it. By what process are we to imagine then that the Masabalas and the Eleazars ascended to socially rarefied heights in both traditions? A gifted few, one supposes, might attempt Parnassus and Sinai simultaneously. But most elite youngsters who needed dual literacy probably pursued one track, and afterwards, in their early teens, took up the other. This Judean practice we may call, for want of another expression, tandem literacies, and it brings us back to the critical period hypothesis. For if it were the practice in Judea for certain elites to pursue Semitic learning, and then only after acquiring literary literacy in Hebrew to undertake a form of the Greek paideia, then frequently such learners would commence instruction in reading Greek after reaching puberty. Training in Moses and the prophets would occupy them to that point. This scenario would mean that Judean tandem literates might often control Greek less well than, say, typical members of the contemporary Roman elite, who often began to learn Greek before they could read Latin. This is the part that I think is really, really interesting. A famous passage in the Antiquities of Josephus may be taken as a supporting this hypothetical reconstruction of Judean education for dual literacy. And here's the passage. And now I take heart from the completion of my proposed work to assert that no one else, either Jew or Gentile, would have been equal to the task, however willing to undertake it, of issuing so accurate a treatise as this for the Greek world. For my compatriots admit that in our Judean learning, I far excel them. Get
good.
Amen. Paideon diapherein. Yeah, I mean, he's not modest.
He's just like, they can't do this. Skill issue.
No. After acquiring a knowledge of Greek grammar, I labored strenuously to command both Greek prose and poetry, yet my native habit of speech prevented me from pronouncing the language properly. Consequently, although many people have laboriously undertaken this training, at most 2 or 3 have succeeded to reap the harvest of their labors. Do you hear what he's saying here? Josephus is basically saying there's I know 3 guys I've ever met who can read and write proficiently in both Hebrew and Greek. And I'm the best of all of them.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Josephus adds this statement at the end of his extensive work, seemingly as an address to listeners rather than readers, since readers would not hear his oral expression. It therefore seems likely that the original setting was that of a recitatio in Rome around the year 95 CE, and that Judean expatriates felt compelled in that cultured context to apologize for his imperfect Greek, marred as it was by a foreign accent, which I think is kind of cute too. I'll read in this paragraph here, the last paragraph on the page. Josephus's comments here reference a 2-step process to his own education, an education that he boasts prepared him as few others to write a work like the Antiquities. He had achieved a mastery of Judean learning, acquiring the ability to read and interpret the Hebrew scriptures at a high level of expertise. He had also progressed through the several stages of a Greek paideia, beginning with grammar and ending with a thorough study of Greco-Roman writings. He notes the rarity of his situation, seeming in particular to mean that a Judean knowing classical prose and poetic works. If this is his meaning, the contextualized data of this study would support his claims, as we have seen very few Judeans studied Greek works of the classical canons. Josephus was no less given to redomentade. I don't know what that word is. Than was Cicero. But for once, his self-assessment may be taken as factual. Not many could do what he had done. So here he attaches some numbers to the work. And I'm looking at the 3rd paragraph here. Recall that according to table 5.6, 21 of 69 signatories to Greek writ were able to sign in Greek. Presumably, these signing in Greek understood the contract as it was read aloud to them. The remainder of the literates signed in Aramaic. Nearly a third of all the male householders who composed the majority of the signatories were able to muster enough Greek to affix their names in the language of the contract, 30.4%. Now, we do not know how much canvassing those responsible did or in order to round up people who could sign in Greek. We must allow that some searching may have occurred, which means that we would need to discount the 30% somewhat. On the other hand, it seems equally probable that some portion of the Aramaic signatories comprehended the Greek contract when it was read aloud in that tongue, but simply could not sign in it. We have no means of deciding whether these two factors cancel each other out, but we are probably on reasonably safe ground if we let the straightforward figure stand for a moment as an approximation. Let us then, for the sake of argument, simply put everyone else aside except for the propertied class males, adopting as a more probable the anti-primitivist model for the Judean economy discussed previously. We would locate these men as representative of the top quartile of the population socially and economically. Working with earlier assumptions of a population of 1 million, we would thus have 9,900 speakers of Greek. 200,000 males times 25% times 19.8%. This figure is self-evidently not nearly the whole, for it assumes that no women, no children, and no people of any but the elite class spoke Greek. Even if half the men spoke some Greek with their families, we would have 24,750 speakers. And the presence of this many speakers at the apex of the social pyramid would over time have a substantial trickle-down effect so that the number would not be static. If, say, the second quartile of the population spoke Greek half as much as the top quartile, the number would be 37,125. If the third quartile embraced half as many Greek speakers as the second, the number would be 43,313. Of the fourth, by the same reasoning, 46,407, with the impression of a considerable amount of Greek spoken in Roman Judea. No solid quantification is possible, but this impression is buttressed by other considerations touched on earlier. So that number there, 46,407, that's like what is that? Oh, we can pull out a calculator and see. I'm going to take this off now. You know,
During
I want to do
Passover?
math. Oh, okay, I'll do it. I'm not having Passover. I also unsubscribed
During
to
Lent?
Well, Lent's over. So, oh, where is my calculator? Sorry.
While you
It's
pull
usually
that up,
right there.
Starbase Co-op wrote in the chat, are you trying to convince me that you can see a difference in a third grader's writing compared to a university student? These liberal
I know,
scholars and their
right? It's
theories.
crazy. It's just madness. Okay, so I'm
That was
punching some
something I was
numbers
going to
in.
bring up while you were reading, is that when you practice handwriting, especially in American schools, you know, they give you lined paper and the lines are really large and you do giant pencils because you're having to
Mhm.
develop fine motor skills. You know,
Yeah.
you start writing with like your elbow and then down to your wrist and then down to your fingers
It's
and
true.
like the muscles in your hand. And that's how your writing becomes more refined over time. But you start out and it's awkward and the lines are shaky because you're not used to controlling those muscles that way. So in the ancient
Mhm.
world, you have to think about the materials that they're practicing on. Did they have chalkboards? Were they using soft clay tablets? Were they
Yeah.
scribbling on papyrus? Because
Probably
a lot of these we
wax
take for
tablets.
granted. Yeah, wax. We take
Yeah.
a lot of this for granted that we could just pull out a scrap piece of paper just pretty much anywhere. But for them, writing materials could be very expensive and you don't just have them laying around. So
Yeah.
education and literacy, it literally costs a lot in terms of time and resource management. So it's not a surprise to me that average Levantine person isn't literate or reading the classics. You know, that's not
Yeah.
shocking to me at all, but it's also not a reflection
at
of
all.
their intelligence. So
No, it's a skill issue, as they say.
it's a skill issue.
So, 46,407 people is 4.6% of the population. As I think a relative estimate of Greek speakers in Roman Palestine. It's probably a little bit higher than that, depending on how much Like those are probably people who can actually carry on conversations in Greek, maybe a little bit higher. I wanted to point something else out because you were talking about media,
Mhm.
writing media, and this I bring this up because I was listening to one of these. Have you noticed that there's all these annoying Bible bro guide talking shows that are popping up all over on YouTube and TikTok? And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm very happy about the democratization of higher education, but then it also makes me cringe and wince to hear guys propagating bullshit that's just wrong because they don't know any better. It's not
Mhm.
helping. So I wanted to point this out because then somebody was on one of these shows talking about all the graffiti in Roman, in Judea. No. So here's another one of the reasons why we're quite confident about the low levels of literacy, particularly in Roman Palestine. Because in Rome, like the imperial city of Rome, there's a ton of graffiti all over, ancient graffiti all over the place. People are drawing dicks on everything. But lots of writing too. Lots of Latin and Greek written graffiti all over buildings. I mean, we've all seen. I can't play it because the last time I played it on this show, I got copyright dinged. But we've all seen like one of the best scenes from the life of Brian, right?
Mhm.
Like that's what Rome looked like, literally. Romanus este domus. Yes. Yes. So there's no graffiti in Judea. It's like extremely sparse, very rare, almost it's almost non-existent. And specialists tell us the reason for that is because it was not widespread. The people who could read and write had proper things to write
Yeah.
on, right? They weren't scratching on the walls and such. So, I just wanted to bring that up. So, yeah, a little bit about how literacy rates are understood and how they're arrived at by scholars. I think Wise's study is really interesting in looking at signatures and documents in order to develop these estimates. So I wanted to go down that rabbit trail a little bit here, but I think just what got us there. I'll just repeat it. Um, no, Wes Huff. Most people in Roman Palestine were not speaking and reading Greek, and most people were just not reading at all. So yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it's not surprising that they're not just reading as a hobby. Printing
Yes.
printing press hadn't made its way west, and everything had to be done by hand, which takes forever,
It
and it's
does.
expensive, requires a lot of schooling and training.
All right.
Ugh,
So we'll let it go. I think we'll
Today?
stop at about 5 minutes at about 5:22. Let's say that.
Okay.
5:22.
And so, about 200 years prior to Jesus, a bunch of the books, particularly the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, were translated from the Hebrew into the Greek. And then, as time went on, more and more books were translated of the Old Testament into Greek. So that started about the 3rd century BC. It didn't really finish until the 1st century AD, but our Hebrew copies of most of the Old Testament were from the Middle Ages for a long, long time.
Wow.
And what the Dead Sea Scrolls did is all of a sudden we have pre-1st century copies of some of these books. And we're able to compare them, to compare something like the Great Psalm Scroll or the Great Isaiah Scroll with copies of what's called the Masoretic text, which is the text of the Hebrew Bible from the Middle Ages, copied by these scribes, the Masoretes, and they're surprisingly similar, shockingly similar. Some of them.
We need a
Play the
Word
clip.
for word. Word for word. Word for word.
Wow.
Word for word. Word for word. Word for word.
Wow.
Some are exact. Not all of them are, but the testimony of the fidelity between the time when we get something like the Leningrad Codex in the Middle Ages to something like the Dead Sea Scrolls is a huge gap, and yet you have now evidence of this faithful copying process over the centuries of scribes, to the point where you can follow them, to the letter. And
Unless they contradict your theology, and then that's just a
Yeah.
variation from like a splinter sect and just some person changing it because reasons.
So yeah. So now I have to say, it's a little surprising to me at the outset. Well, first of all, there is this, and I'll share this right now, because this came up today. So I posted this on my community tab. Wes, you can't see it yet. So there we go. And I can, and that's just,
big in it.
there we go. So Wes showed a lovely picture here of Masada Leviticus B from the 2nd century. Sorry, 1st century, late 1st century. And he provided this quotation from Armand Langa at in Vienna, who is the editor of the Textual History of the Bible. Given the up to 100% agreement of the consonantal text of the Codex Leningrad with ancient Proto-Masoretic manuscripts such as Masada Leviticus B, the work of the Masoretes must be judged as a stunning success.
Question.
Yes.
Up to 100%.
Yeah.
That is
Not quite
concerning.
100%.
That's very concerning to me. Imagine walking into a restaurant and they're like, it's made with up to 100% chicken.
Yes. Yeah.
So what are we doing here with this up to 100% thing?
Yeah. We are taking it for granted that people aren't going to think too hard about it.
That's the entire
So,
margin.
I want to read this response here because this gets into what I want to talk about next. There are literally hundreds of early Jewish manuscripts of the Bible, all which predate Masada Leviticus B, and which do not preserve anything even close to the Masoretic text. That feels like a rather convenient omission. The way that apologists insist on ignoring these crucial witnesses to the dynamic and interesting development of the biblical text for their myopic fixation on the empty always feels like a very convenient omission. In truth, the history of the Bible is messy and it's complex. The Masoretes were geniuses who ensured the preservation of the Hebrew Bible in medieval Christendom quite a bit later. But they were working with but a single text type from among many, stemming from an earlier period of massive textual pluriformity.
Crown of Aleppo.
So it's interesting to me, though, curious to me as well, that that Wes invoked this manuscript. He talked about the great Isaiah scroll and being able to find the textual fidelity of that with the Masoretic text. And I mean, we've a whole bunch of us have beaten that horse to death. He mentions another manuscript here. The 11Q Psalm scroll, 11Q Psalms A. Oh, shall we do some show and tell? This is a nice opportunity. Don't worry, I got this, Fish. To just show people. I don't do this enough. This is the Leon Levy Dead Sea Scrolls Digital Library, where you can access photographs of all the Dead Sea Scrolls. And this is how you do it. You go to the Explore the Archive link here, and you type in to the search bar what you're looking for. And today I'm looking for it's 11Q5 is the Psalm scroll. You could do it this way. You could just type in Psalms, and then it'll bring up all the Psalms manuscripts, and you can refine this. You go to K of 11. There you go. 11Q Psalms A.
Woohoo!
52 images. This is what it looks like.
Yeah.
It's
a big old scroll.
Yes. It's
also, can you scroll back a little bit? Or right there. Whoa. Center, or in this case, it's either the left or the right column. It's at the first line of the second paragraph. If you could zoom in on that, I want people to see something.
Oh, you want people to see
Yeah. You know where I'm going with that.
I know where you're going. Can I? I don't know if I think I'm in all the way.
Dang.
Shoot.
Dang it.
I know, I'm sorry. Can anybody see my cursor? Probably not. I think
look at the second word in the second paragraph on the left-hand column, and you will notice that it switches from Hebrew to the ancient
bastardized Paleo Hebrew script.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's frequently they write the name of God in that notation a lot, which is one of the first things that stuck out to me when I was looking through these. So
yeah,
very cool.
That's it. That's as far as I can go. So just a stunning manuscript. It's one of the best preserved manuscripts of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It is a complete, I'll say it's a psalter. Most scholars have described this manuscript as a psalter. That's like a collection of psalms, but this is a really intriguing example that Wes brings up. And at this point, I'll read a little bit. My friend Eva Marochek, who we read a little bit from last week, has done extensive work on this manuscript as well as the Psalms in I'm just going to quit that, in early Judaism. And she has written a wonderful book called The Literary Imagination in Early Judaism. And I will just read to you a little bit about what she has to say about this particular manuscript. I'm going to start at page 25. Okay. So let me just get back there. Okay. Before I'll just start with this paragraph here. Before the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, our data for the Book of Psalms was fairly uniform. The rabbinic Psalter, with 150 psalms, was not so different from the Septuagint Psalms, known from 4th and 5th century Christian manuscripts, which contained an additional Psalm 151. Medieval Syriac codices sometimes added 5 additional apocryphal psalms at the end of the Psalter. But barring differences of division and counting and the inclusion of different headings for the Psalms, the Book of Psalms was by and large the same book in a known ancient tradition. Scholars were aware of different chronological origins for separate psalms, since the dates of individual compositions themselves have long been known to range from some of the earliest known Hebrew poetry through post-exilic compositions. But by the Hellenistic period, it seemed to go without saying that the Psalter had long served as Israel's sacred prayer book and was believed by the ancients to have been composed by King David as his own heartfelt expressions of prayer and praise. But the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls revealed a different picture of Psalms in the first century. Rather than a Milton-esque book where King David's purported revelatory words were contained and embalmed, we have evidence that Psalms existed in various arrangements and that collections were continuing to expand. At the center of the discussion was 11Q Psalms A, one of the longest and best preserved Dead Sea Scrolls, dated to the mid-1st century. This text contains parts of about 50 compositions, most from what is now the last third of the Hebrew Psalter. Important to remember, none of them were numbered in the late Second Temple period. So it's not like it's not like the people who put this collection together understood that these were, the last 50 Psalms of the Book of Psalms. It's not like they had a number, 100 to 150 for them. Not only this, this text contains parts of about 50 compositions, most from what is now the last third of the Hebrew Psalter, but in an entirely different order from the biblical one. Not only this, lost my spot. Not only this, but 10 of the compositions are non-biblical texts, including Hebrew versions of the so-called additional Greek Psalm 151, 2 other psalms known only from medieval Syriac manuscripts, and a handful of other compositions unknown outside of the Dead Sea Scrolls. This unusual collection presented scholars with an obvious question. Is this scroll a version of the scriptural Psalter, or is it another kind of text such as a liturgical collection that is secondary to and dependent on the biblical Book of Psalms? And does it represent an anomalous collection specific to the sectarians of Qumran, or can it tell us about the Psalms in first century Jewish culture more broadly? While the debate continues, the major scholarly consensus has become that 11Q Psalms A does indeed represent a scriptural collection. It is not secondary to an already existing authoritative Psalter because no one such text had yet been established. Instead, it represents a time when the order and contents of the Book of Psalms had not yet been fixed. And like the vast majority of the texts found at Qumran, it is not a strictly sectarian composition, but participates in a wider culture. These insights contributed to the history of the development of the Hebrew Psalter, which scholars now imagine happened gradually, perhaps in 2 stages. The order of the texts of Psalm 1 to 89 became stabilized first, with the latter half of the Psalter still in flux and circulating in diverse versions as of the 1st century CE. So, do you understand why I think it's a curious manuscript for West to settle on in his description of the fidelity of the Masoretic scribes in copying their texts? Like, 11Q Psalms A is a really, really different kind of manuscript. Ava goes on to make some descriptions of the contents here, which I think are useful for helping us to understand this further. Is it there? Oh, this is just speaking of Psalms more generally, not just of 11Q5. She says in 11Q11, that's another copy of the Psalms from Cave 11. Psalm 91, and we talked a little bit about this last time. We talked about the Psalms. Psalm 91 closes a collection of 4 songs apparently meant for an exorcism ritual. The motifs of divine refuge and protection from evil in Psalm 91 fit well with the apotropaic themes of the other compositions. At least one of the texts has a Davidic heading, and the collection participates in a tradition that links David and exorcism, first evident in 1 Samuel 16, 13-23, where David's lyre playing rids Saul, is it lyre or lyre? Lyre playing rids Saul of an evil spirit. It is further developed in Pseudo-Philo's Biblical Antiquities 60, verses 2-3, which provides the lyrics of a song he played, and which shares with 11Q11 a deep interest in the creation of darkness and light, and a reference to Solomon. In 11Q11, then, we have a Davidic collection of ritual songs that, while it appears from our scholarly lists of psalm scrolls, has little to do with the Book of Psalms. Manuscript 4Q522 or 4Q Psalm 122 is a second example of an entirely different genre of literature in which a psalm appears, a Joshua apocryphon. This text contains a discourse on place names in the campaigns of Joshua, the defeat of the Canaanites, the promise of a secure Jerusalem with a temple planned by David and constructed by Solomon, and Psalm 122, a Davidic song of ascents about the holy city of Jerusalem, which fits well with the triumphalistic progression of the text. The text is likely included in lists of psalm scrolls, so it can be used specifically to do text criticism on Psalm 122, and Peter Flint acknowledges that it does not qualify as a psalm scroll, but it nevertheless appears on lists of the 36 psalm manuscripts, increasing the illusion of many copies of the Book of Psalms. A third example is 4Q Psalm 89, one of the most curious and perhaps the oldest texts on the list of Qumran Psalms scrolls. Parts of 8 lines of a version of Psalm 89 have been preserved on a, quote, battered and isolated bit, end quote, measuring 6 centimeters tall and 45 centimeters wide, written with unusual orthography, crowded letters, and text running into the margins. The text form of this psalm differs substantially from both the Masoretic text and the Septuagint, and the verses are in a different order, based on the text squeezed in smaller letters on the top margin of the fragment. It seems that this text contained nothing more than part of Psalm 89. How do we explain this strange fragment? It has variously been called a source for the Psalter, part of a libretto of messianic testimonia, or a practice page written from memory. Here again, while we cannot precisely determine the purpose of this text, it represents a rather different modality of text production than its presence on a list of psalm scrolls may suggest. These examples illustrate very different generic contexts in which psalms appeared: an exorcism ritual, a historical, prophetical composition related to Joshua literature, a possible practice text written from memory. These texts have little in common with one another. They testified to a wide variety of genres in which psalmic texts appeared, rather than to the popularity or authority of the Book of Psalms. What about these manuscripts then that do contain psalm collections? Here too, the evidence testifies to a diversity of extents and contents, not copies or even versions of the same work. Physically, there is no way to be certain about the original size of the manuscripts, but it is unlikely that anything close to the scope of the Book of Psalms had existed among the scrolls. The most extensive scroll, 11Q Psalms A, contains about 50 compositions, all of which come from what is now roughly the last third of the biblical Psalter. It is unlikely that it had originally contained much more. Even with only 1/3 of what is now the canonical Psalter, this 5-meter scroll is by far the longest manuscript containing Psalms and among the longest scrolls found at Qumran. A manuscript containing 150 Psalms would be longer than any extant scroll. Thus, rather than Psalters, we have various short collections of Psalms in different configurations, likely used for a variety of purposes. So that's the situation, the textual situation with respect to the Psalms in the Dead Sea Scrolls that impinges directly upon how we're going to understand this particular manuscript. And instead of hand-waving at it like Wes does, as a great exemplar of the textual fidelity inherited by the Masoretes, I think there's much, much, much more interesting questions afoot. There's way more information and data available when it comes to looking at these texts instead of bean counting the letters to see how much it aligns or differs from late medieval texts. All right, I'm off my soapbox now. Ready to go?
Going
Or is there
to
things to...
I was going to explain in the chat that we were trying to figure out which passage was on this particular scroll, and we were trying to figure out what one of the letters was, and it just didn't look familiar.
Which one?
And I just now was like, oh, duh, it's a Gimel. So,
okay. Good.
Yeah, that's the G stanza of the Psalm 119. So
yes. That's
I
what we
did
have here.
not recognize Gimel looking like that, so it took me a very, very long time. And I just
Gimel's a funny
also
one.
remembered the way that they spell final second person masculine, like possessive. Your works or your whatever.
Yeah,
They spell it.
the
Yeah.
plain
Cough.
spelling, the full
Yeah.
spelling
Cough hey.
with a cough hey, as opposed to just
Yeah.
the regular
That's the final cough. Yeah.
Makes sense, right? Like you know,
Yeah, to me, it makes it a
without
lot
the
more clear.
pointing,
Yeah.
you kind of need these clarifications.
Yeah,
So
that was one thing that
yeah.
threw me off a lot when I was reading through the psalm that
What
you
is
sent
this?
me that I had requested, like for the Asheray. I was like, oh, why am I seeing all these weird spellings? And then I went, oh, of course, it's much easier to read with this. It's spelling it the long way. So anyway.
I'm just I was never here is asking why there's an aleph above the second line on the second paragraph on the left page, and that is that would be a correction, I believe, to a first person, and I will answer, or I answered probably, because this is the Vav part of the acrostic. So yeah, it's just correcting the verb.
Yeah,
from a
that's the
third-person
difference
verb
between
to
answer and
a
humble,
first-person
isn't it?
verb.
Anna
It could be
versus
humble.
Anna.
Yeah, it could be
But,
humble.
yeah.
I looked at the word.
Yeah.
I wasn't, but that's probably okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah,
great.
good. All right, let's continue. How much? Well, it's 4:15. We'll go for we'll go for a little bit. I've got one more section here of stuff that I wanted to talk about, but yeah. So put the video back.
All right.
Because now he's talked now about text traditions and the amazing fidelity of the Masoretes, which is, I mean, like I said, it's great when you get to the medieval period, but you know, that's not the impression I feel is left, that in the late Second Temple period, all the scribes who were copying texts were just like the Masoretes, and they weren't. All the texts that they had were not the Masoretic text. It's a much richer, more complicated picture that we have at an
Is
earlier
this a
period of time.
light bar on the floor between their feet?
I don't know. I think it is. I've been trying to figure that out myself. It sort of looks like it, doesn't it?
Like, you know what? I'm not even gonna say
Listen,
anything.
I'm not about to cast any shade at this studio setup because I think it looks pretty. I think it's very, very impressive. You know, I probably wouldn't have so many guns and flags.
You and I
But
both
listen.
know that as long as it's the United States of America flag, you can have guns and assault rifles everywhere and it's fine. But if there's
Yeah.
a flag from, say, a country that its dominant religion is Islam and there's guns everywhere, that's militant Islam. That's
That's a good point.
but no, it's
actually.
perfectly fine when they do it.
Yeah.
You know, they're
So-
soldiers for Christ.
But you know,
But yeah,
it's not,
I was
not-
gonna say this is actually not great lighting, but that's okay.
no.
See
I-
the fidelity of these texts.
Is there any New Testament in there?
No, so it's all Old Testament. So the thing with the Dead Sea Scrolls is that most of them predate Jesus.
Oh,
Some of them are written in
pause
around the
it for a
time when Jesus
second.
was.
Because I gotta give a shout out to
Yeah, Pat's in
my
here.
my former mentor. Who's here? Sorry. Oh, hi Pat.
Pat.
I
Yep.
wasn't actually going to shout out Pat, but hi Pat. I'll
But you should.
shout you out. And it's I can hit this now too. Some or many of the Dead Sea Scrolls texts contain magical incantations alongside and within a variety of recognizable biblical texts, not unlike magical cookbooks. I wouldn't say many. Certainly a few are like that, and I've written papers on that too. So I was going to give a shout out to my former mentor, the late great Professor Peter W. Flint, who wrote an excellent article, not a peer-reviewed article. It's still a very good article that was published in Biblical Archaeology Review, because there was for a time thought going around that one of the small Greek fragments from Cave 7, which was a cave that contained nothing but Greek fragments, which is interesting in and of itself. But one of these was identified by a scholar as a copy, a fragment of the book of Mark from the 1st century. And you can imagine, you know, how sensational that
Mhm.
find would have been. The fragment itself has one complete word on it. I believe it's 4 lines. And then I think 2 or maybe 3 more words that are reconstructed. And then it's just, there's very little there, almost nothing there. Peter Flint wrote a really good article for Biblical Archaeology Review about 15 years ago now, where he very convincingly showed that it's absolutely not a copy of Mark's gospel, and it almost certainly is a copy of text from the book of Enoch in Greek, which is
Amazing.
no less interesting. Well, now I have to say too,
love that.
the one complete Greek word on the fragment, if I remember correctly, was hotain, which is just, you know, the feminine singular 3rd person pronoun. So, yeah, but I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I think if you've got a copy of the you know, something from Enoch in Greek in the 1st century in the Dead Sea Scrolls, I think that's pretty cool too. So maybe it doesn't rise to the level of Mark sensationalism, 1st century Mark sensationalism, but 1st century Greek Enoch sensationalism is you know, it's not that far down. It's right up there. So, but no New Testament in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Okay.
was living, but they're mostly the writings. We think of a group called the Essenes, who were a sectarian group of Jews who had removed themselves from the Jerusalem community and gone out into the desert in this area called Qumran. So they were if you read the New Testament, you're going to hear about groups like the Sadducees and the Pharisees. The Essenes were a group aside from that. And they had gone out into the desert and they had kind of their own rules and regulations, but they also copied a lot of these books. And so along with a lot of other books, they had like rules and wrote about what their religious practices were, and then had some other theological writings that they deemed valuable. But they clearly viewed what we call the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, the scriptures, as incredibly important, as scriptural, as their guiding principles. But they often viewed...
Pause it for 1 second.
Hell of a way to totally ignore Jubilees.
Right, but this is just it, right? Importantly, at best, 30% of the collection is anything that appears in the Hebrew Bible. All the rest of it, and it's not just rules, and I don't like the way he sort of hand-waved at other theological writings that they found interesting. No, like it is
which ones?
It is a rich collection of all sorts of texts, including the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Enoch, Aramaic Levi, and other stuff that we had never seen before. One of the texts that they loved in the Dead Sea Scrolls is a text that has come to be known as instruction. It's like a book of wisdom, very similar to what you see in the book of Proverbs or in the book of Ben Sira. Ben Sira also, by the way, in Hebrew, found in both Qumran, very fragmentary in Qumran, but it's there, as well as a pretty good looking copy at Matsada, just down the road on the southern end of the Dead Sea, which that's very cool, I think. So but yeah, just an incredibly rich literary tradition, a huge collection of texts, well beyond the confines of any Bible that they consider to be important and useful, to the extent that some of us scholars don't think that these are useful categories anymore when it comes to describing what's there. Wes says clearly they thought the texts of the Hebrew Bible were important. Well, not all of them, definitely.
Which
there's some that they really, really liked, and even let's just not even forget the ones that aren't there. Let's just talking about the ones that are there. There are certainly texts from the Hebrew Bible that they really, really liked. They loved the book of Genesis because Genesis. But also they loved the book of Jubilees and they loved the book of Enoch because they're, very much like Genesis and, doing other very cool things beyond what's happening in the book of Genesis. They also really liked the book of Deuteronomy. They really liked the books of Isaiah and the minor prophets. They loved Psalms. I'm not going to say the book of Psalms. They loved Psalms and had all sorts of different kinds of collections of Psalms in their literature. But you know what they didn't seem to like very much? Like the book of First and Second Kings. Didn't seem to have much use for that. They didn't seem to have much use for the book of Ecclesiastes, even though they had some copies of it there, or the book of Ruth, even though they had some copies there, or the books of Chronicles are only evidenced in tiny little fragments. It's not just as simple as saying they loved the Bible. The people who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls did not fucking love the Bible. They didn't, because there was none. they fucking loved Genesis and Jubilees and Enoch and Instruction and Isaiah and lots of these texts, the Chodayot, Aramaic Levi, stuff that we didn't recognize prior to the discovery of the caves of Qumran. So it's such an incomplete picture. It's such a distorted picture of the contents of what's there at Qumran that it's always, I hate to say that I get offended by it, but it kind of, I kind of do as somebody who spends a lot of time in this literature. I kind of do. I got to admit it. So, all right.
Okay.
Propheticness of those as applying to their day right then and there. Like they thought kind of apocalyptically that they were going to be the reason why, everything was solved because of their very faithful practice.
Okay.
But in Jerusalem, they'd capitulated. They were, in bed with Rome, and they'd removed themselves. They were pure. They were holy, and they had some other
there to
practices
the
that were
video,
a little bit
Vish.
more.
You are awesome. So I got to say something about this here, just quickly. What he's talking about, scholarly theories with regards to the people who wrote and collected the Dead Sea Scrolls say that this was a group of priests who were disenfranchised from the Jerusalem establishment of priests and scandalized by the corruption of probably the Sadducean leaders of the Jerusalem temple. And this happened in and around the time of shortly either at some point before or maybe even after the Hasmonean revolt in the middle of the 2nd century BCE. And they established themselves in fierce defiance to the temple. They viewed the Jerusalem temple as helplessly corrupt and irredeemably what's the word? Defiled. That's the word. It just that there was no hope for it. So their expectation was that the last days were upon them, that the world as they knew it was going to end, and then God was going to come back and kill all the Romans and probably their Jewish enemies as well, and was going to establish the eschatological temple, similar to what we view in the book of Ezekiel, although they had their own version that we know from the temple scroll, which was much bigger and much more elaborate. God was going to establish that temple on earth, and they were just patiently waiting for that to happen. And we can continue.
Sectarian and agmatic there. So not all of the documents in the Dead Sea Scrolls are part of the Qumran community. A lot of them are, but then there are other writings from groups that were hidden in the caves that kind of, and then some of them are just like very unusual. There's a treasure map.
What's the treasure map do?
So it's known as the Copper Scroll. So it's the only one that's not on either parchment or on papyrus, but it's on very thin sheets of copper, and it's rolled up, and it's a treasure map with all of these locations of a lot of gold and silver.
Really?
So some people have tried to kind of decode it and figure out where, is this some of the stuff that's the treasure from the temple? Is this, some of the treasure of Solomon from the Old Testament? It's not entirely clear. But it does appear to be like the person who wrote it does seem to think that this is where treasure is. But that's kind of an outlier. A lot of the others have to do with religious practice or kind of historical scriptural things.
What percentage of this is in the Bible or is a book in the Bible?
So about so all of the books of the Bible, apart from one prophetic book and Esther, were found in amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls.
No. that's wrong. Not a prophetic book. All the so-called prophetic books, that from the Hebrew Bible are represented in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Esther is missing from Qumran, and so is Nehemiah. Although there is some thought that Nehemiah was probably there, and I don't know how I feel about this, honestly, but there is some thought among scholars that Nehemiah was probably there because the assumption is made that Ezra and Nehemiah were collected together. Within Jewish tradition, Ezra and Nehemiah were collected together. They were viewed as basically two parts of the same book. They probably existed on the same scroll, in the early medieval period before they were putting stuff on codices. So the assumption then is made that this was inherited from an earlier period in Judaism and during the Second Temple period. So the assumption is made sometimes that if Ezra's there, and we have a couple of fragments from manuscripts of Ezra. If Ezra's there, then there's a solid chance that Nehemiah was also there, but just did not survive. And like I said, I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I get the argument is sound, but I certainly do prefer data. But yeah.
Okay.
All right. Now
it's also in a number of.
Before you continue, he asked,
what percentage?
Percentage?
And Wes just hasn't given an answer.
Maybe he's getting there. Let's hear him out.
Different languages, so about 75% of it is written in Hebrew, but some of it is written in Greek and some in Aramaic, and a very small minority in Nabatean. So that's where it's kind of a grouping. The Dead Sea Scrolls is an umbrella term for all of these writings.
See, this is part of the problem without being precise about our, what we're talking about here, because it sounds like up to this point it has sounded like he's talking about the caves of Qumran, and I believe he actually says here in just a minute, they were found in 11 caves at Qumran. This Dead Sea Scrolls is an umbrella term for all the discoveries of manuscripts in the Judean desert is common. So this includes other sites. And I feel like he's getting this information just from reading off of Leon Levy's, the site that we looked at, their description. And what they will say is that, yes, there's manuscripts in Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic that were discovered. There were also manuscripts in Latin that were discovered in the Judean desert, and there were manuscripts in Nabatean that were discovered in the Judean desert. However, I think Arabic as well. Some real important qualification is needed here, though. The only Latin manuscripts that were discovered were found at Matzah. None of the other sites. There was Arabic manuscripts found at Khirbet Mir, and they all date to like the 6th century, right? 6th, 7th century CE, right? So pretty late. And then we have a tiny handful of Nabatean papyri from Nachal Haver. Nabatean, by the way, is Aramaic, but they had their own really interesting special script. There's some tiny little dialectical differences as well, but they had their own really interesting, neat script, which ended up becoming a progenitor, I believe, of Arabic script later on. Importantly, though, no Nabatean at Qumran. The only language represented in the manuscripts at Qumran are Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. That's it. So
cool. It just happened to be discovered in these 11 caves on the northwest
See
side
there, he just said
of
it,
the
right?
Dead Sea.
See, this is where
But
this
they're
is what bugs me. This is where the
incredibly
imprecision
important.
just bugs me. He just said they were found in the 11 caves, even though he's talking about Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic, and Nabatean. No, like it's the Judean desert is bigger than Qumran. If you're just going to talk about Qumran, then just talk about Qumran.
And shed light on even things like there's one particular manuscript which talks about the Messiah and talks about the Messiah in divine terms. And so this kind of sheds light on our understanding of accusations that early Christians are imposing foreign.
Hang on.
Mhm.
Is there one, or is he talking about the teacher of righteousness and then just confusing them?
No, and we'll talk. This is where I wanted you to stop it actually at this point, because I think this is important to talk about. I wonder if I can get my. Oh, there. That's a separate window. That looks good. Oh wait, no, I just fucked it. I just fucked this up. Shoot.
Okay, well, you're pulling that up.
But yeah, just some super chats or some things that we can. Okay, good.
279 beaver bucks. Thank you for educating us in history and linguistics.
Yeah. You know what? Maybe the thing to do here is just close all these windows. And then
Concretes for 10. Can't wait for the West Huff 4-in-1 synoptic Leatherman, just like Origin used. Good.
very nice.
Okay.
So what I want to do,
Let me,
I want to show the text and the translation of
Tree
the
Flame Tad, I love this set, but I would just replace the American flags with pride flags.
Yeah, now you're
Oh
talking.
yeah, translates. That's right. And Jennifer Silvas for 5. Were the Latin manuscripts anti-Rome missives? Thinking Lego animation.
You know what? I don't know anything about the Roman manuscripts, the Latin manuscripts, sorry. And now I wish I did. I expect that they were probably letters, or lists. So, yeah, I should look into that. I should see what that is. Okay. So I wish
This is a two-parter. Really quick. Do we know if the Qumran community were scenes? Up to 100% a scene. Okay, go ahead.
But importantly, we don't know that, right? These are scholarly theories, the identity of the people who occupied the site. And even if the people who occupied the site had anything to do with the manuscripts, and even if they had something to do with some of the manuscripts, did they have something to do with all of them? Because I mentioned this before, there's 11 caves within a 1.5 kilometer proximity to the site that are all, connected to the site. But are they actually all connected to the site, or are some of these caves just caves that happen to be close by that people fleeing from Jerusalem stashed their manuscripts in? Like, for example, the Copper Scroll was discovered in Cave 3. Cave 3 is the cave that is the furthest distance away from the site of Qumran. And the contents of Cave 3, the Copper Scrolls in Cave 3, but in addition to the Copper Scroll, you've got a relatively high, not many manuscripts, but among the manuscripts that are there, you have a relatively high concentration of Aramaic manuscripts. And you've got, I think, Ezekiel is in Cave 3, and I'm blanking on just about everything else. But what the point that I'm getting at is Cave 3 even connected to Qumran at all? Or is it just a cave that people stashed stuff in as they were fleeing Jerusalem, thinking that they were coming back and collecting what's there? So I don't have an answer to that question. I don't. And I think it's an active, open question about
There's
about the
also
contents.
2 questions that I wanted to spotlight for you that came along a long time ago, but there wasn't really a good place to stop. So
Okay.
this one, have you guys already or considered doing a part on the scroll regional differences and how they compare directly to modern translation and interpretations, where differences and contextual fails?
I don't understand scroll regional differences.
I think
don't
they're
know what
still in
that.
chat, so maybe they will
Please, if you could
clarify.
clarify scroll regional differences and how they compare directly to modern translations and interpretations, where differences and contextual fails. I've done a lot of that, like comparing to modern translations, interpretations, word differences, and contextual fails. I've done a lot of that work already in my the Dead Sea Scrolls Apologetically series, which you can find here on the channel. There's a playlist. I think it's got 9 videos in it. So you know, you'll find some of that there. And that is a lot of that kind of stuff is certainly going to be included as I continue. I still intend on finishing that series at some point. But yeah, you know, a lot of that is going to be, I'll continue to do a lot of that in there. If you're still in chat, you can let me know what you mean by regional differences. I'm not sure I understand that.
Okay.
But
And the other one by Lisa Shelley Butterfly. Are there any consequences for a scholar like West that consistently misstates and misinforms people about the very things he's supposed to be an expert on? No.
not really. I mean, I think there's certain professional consequences in that. He's probably never getting a job at like a proper university, and probably not even most, I would think, like seminaries or theological schools, because like most of them do have pretty rigorous academic standards for their faculty, and don't like it when they you know, if you're going to lie publicly, they probably don't want to hire you, right?
This is
So
why I'm on record putting actual money on the fact that I don't believe that Wes will ever finish his PhD. Prove me wrong, Wes. And that his success in the evangelical apologetics world, he's already punched his ticket. He has all the money
That's
he's
it.
ever going to need just by working for them. So why would he finish? What's the incentive?
yeah, I think I agree. I think there's not much incentive for him to even finish at this point. But I like, yes, we shall see, right? So but let's talk about this claim that he just made here, about, because you asked a question about whether he's talking about what he's talking about here. And I'll just repeat it here. He says, where is it here? This kind of sheds light on our understanding. Oh yes, he says that there's things like, there's one particular manuscript which talks about the Messiah and talks about the Messiah in divine terms. And so this kind of sheds light on our understanding of accusations that early Christians are imposing a foreign idea onto Jesus, you know, that the Messiah was going to be a divine figure. Well, we have actually some texts in the Dead Sea Scrolls which actually do kind of indicate that the Messiah who's about to come, this anointed one, he's actually going to have a divine quality to him that exceeds just a mere man. So, and then he says, actually, if you want to put it back on the stage, I don't think, if you want to put it back up and just finish this a little bit, because
okay,
we'll just finish this
idea on to Jesus, you know, that the Messiah was going to be a divine figure. Well, we have actually some texts in the Dead Sea Scrolls which actually do kind of indicate that the Messiah who's about to come, this anointed one, he's actually going to have a divine quality to him that exceeds just a mere man.
They're writing about this before he came.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was the expectation that the Messiah was going to come.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going on all throughout, the Old Testament period. But
Okay. Stop.
the Essenes,
A couple things.
they
First of all, that was not going on all throughout the Old Testament period. Messianism is something that developed much, much later than most of the biblical texts were written. There's just nothing approaching messianic expectation in the vast majority of texts in the Hebrew Bible.
Isn't that
Text
like
certainly not in the
mid
first
to
temple
late
period.
Hellenistic period?
Yeah. Yeah. Like some of the earliest stuff goes back to like maybe there's some hints of this in what's called the Little Apocalypse in Isaiah.
Okay.
24 or 28. But scholars have really pushed back on this text as one that even comes from the first temple period. There are plenty of scholars who say this is a later text even that's been inserted into Isaiah. But now he has said there is a text that describes the Messiah in divine qualities, that he was expected to be this godlike figure and more than just a man, and this is why the gospels present Jesus like this, or this expectation that Jesus was God. He's making this connection here, right? I really wish he would have mentioned which text that was, because this leaves me now to guess. And guessing, there's a couple of options. My suspicion is that it's one of two texts. It's either 4Q 521, the so-called Messianic Apocalypse, or it's 11Q 13, 11Q Melchizedek, the so-called
Ooh,
Melchizedek.
yeah.
Right? So,
Even some people in the chat were bringing up Melchizedek.
Yeah. Should we look at these? I think it's important to look at these. So, I'm going to stop sharing that.
Wait, you don't have a game today, right?
I do not.
Okay,
So,
I was gonna panic.
You were gonna panic because of the time.
Like, oh, you're gonna be late.
No, I'm okay. Is it this window? No. Where's my? Oh, is it this one? Shoot, where did it go? Yeah, it's that one. Okay. Let's look at this one. Okay, so I've put up here. This is my accordance, and this is the text in English and Hebrew. I'll drop my halot.
Okay.
I can even bigger, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and let's make that one bigger too, because I like when they line up. It's getting smaller. That's bad. Okay. There. That's better. That's pretty good. So let's go to, first let's go to 4Q 521, the so-called Messianic Apocalypse. Most of this material where the Messiah is mentioned is in column 2 of the text, which is reconstructed from a handful of fragments. That's what you see up here. 4Q 521, fragment 2, column 2 plus fragment 4, line 1. So and then it continues, and I'll just read this. This is what we have here. Oops, there we go. For the heavens and the earth shall listen to it's Lamashiacho, to his Messiah,
Anointed.
and all which is in them shall not turn away from the commandments of the Kedoshim, the holy ones, which is an interesting expression here. We see Mamatzot Kedoshim, the commandments of the holy ones. Not sure who that is. Kadosh, most frequently in the Dead Sea Scrolls, is with reference to like divine beings, like angels or minor deity gods.
Interesting.
So, but I don't know if that's what's happening here, or if this is, because it almost sounds like my instinct is to think that this is a way of referring to like the prophets, right?
Hmm.
But I don't know.
I mean,
Anyway,
this also makes me think that because they were so concerned with purity, holiness, and being separated from those who were not as strict as
mm,
them, they're using kadosh in the most
in
plain
that, yeah,
sense,
right.
distinct,
Those who,
separated.
those who have
So,
separated themselves. Yeah, that's
mhm.
that's where that works too, right? On a very practical level here. So, but they're supposed to turn away. Those who are not turning away, sorry, from these commandments. Strengthen yourself. By the way, this is the translation of Martin Abegg, Mike Wise, and we just read
Mm.
Mike Wise, same Mike Wise, who did the literacy book, and Ed Cook. It's my go-to English translation. I think it's a very, very good English translation, but it's also because Marty Abegg is my friend, I like to use it as well. So
It could be both.
yeah, sure. Yeah. But anyways, line 3 starts with strengthen yourselves, you who seek the Lord, and here it's Adonai, Adonai, not God or not the tetragrammaton, right? The Lord in his service. Will you not find the Lord again in this, all those who hope in their heart? For the Lord attends to the pious. And here it's Chassidim in line 5. And this is an interesting word because it has been suggested by some scholars that this word is a way that the writers and the collectors of the Dead Sea Scrolls identified themselves. This was their word for themselves. It's not settled. It's controversial in the sense that it's something that's still debated, but that's out there. Sorry, the Lord attends to the pious, to the Chassidim, and calls the righteous by name. Over the humble, and that's the Anavim. Over the humble, his spirit hovers. And I like this. Can you hear it? His spirit hovers over the humble. I'm
Like
just looking for it
Genesis.
here. It's yes. Roko. Tirochov. It's the same verb that's used in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, of the Spirit of God hovering over the waters of creation, right? I think that's very cool. Over the humble, his spirit hovers, and he renews the faithful in his strength. My complaint, I'll say, about the Wise, Abegg's, and Cook's translation is all the goddamn capitalization of the pronouns. I hate it. Just hate it.
Yeah.
When people do that. So I think it's leading, and it makes things unclear a lot of times. It's anyways. For he will honor the pious, the Chassidim, again, upon the throne of his eternal kingdom, setting prisoners free, opening the eyes of the blind, raising up those who are bowed down. Quoting Psalm 146, verses 7 to 8. Now, that should sound familiar to most people because this is a string of characteristics that are applied to Jesus in I think in Luke's gospel. This is what when John the Baptist sends people to inquire after Jesus. John the Baptist is in prison, and he sends people to inquire of Jesus if he is the one for whom they are waiting, or if they should expect another. And that's how he responds to them, right? People are seeing, prisoners set free, the eyes of the blind are being opened, raising up those who are bowed down, which is really interesting because Jesus says raising the dead, right? This is different, but it's interesting. It's like reinstating, it's like lifting up, helping people stand up who are, bowed down in humiliation.
Yeah,
In this
oppression, basically.
Yeah. And forever I shall hold fast to those who hope, and in his faithfulness shall, and then it breaks off, unfortunately, at the end of line 9, but it picks up here in line 10 and 11. The fruit of good deeds shall not be delayed for anyone, and the Lord shall do glorious things which have not been done, just as he said, for he shall heal the critically wounded. He shall revive the dead. He shall send good news to the afflicted. Isaiah chapter 61, verse 1, which is also a text that appears in the Gospels. Usually it's the one who sends good news to the afflicted is this is usually held with reference to John the Baptist. This is an important text, though, and it comes up again, as we're going to look at in the Melchizedek scroll in 11Q13, right? So he shall satisfy the poor, he shall guide the uprooted, he shall make the hungry rich. And then it breaks off again, unfortunately. I think there's another part here of the text which talks about the Messiah. Here in fragment 7 plus fragment 5, column 2, line 1. This is further interesting. A lot of this is reconstructed. See all that the Lord has made, the earth and all that is on it, the seas and all that is in them, and every lake and stream. All of you who have done good before the Lord, bless and not as those who curse. They shall be destined to die when the reviver raises the dead of his people. Then we shall give thanks and relate to you the righteous acts of the Lord. And then it breaks off, those destined to die, and he shall open the graves. Something about the valley of death. The accursed shall languish and the heavens shall advance. Something about the angels. So lots of interesting things going on in this text, but you can see, I think, why scholars, some people have set on this text, which mentions the Messiah, his Messiah, whoever that is that the Lord? Could be. It's a good bet. But then there's this recounting of all these wonderful things that are going to happen. All we have is this third person singular pronoun, he or him or his. But who is this talking about? Is this talking about his Messiah, or is this talking about the Lord that's going to do all
Also,
these things?
I really am taking issue with their choice to like capitalize his and Messiah. Like
Right.
choosing
Yes.
to
Yep.
call it Messiah
Sure.
and not his anointed. Those are
Yeah.
two very, very different connotations.
Yes. Yes. True. So some of what's playing into this is a little bit of what we see at Qumran about their messianic expectation was that there would be two messiahs, a Messiah of the line of Aaron and a
Messiah ben,
Messiah of the line of David.
I was
One
going to
was
say
going to
Messiah ben
be,
David and Messiah ben Joseph. Yeah.
but not Messiah ben David and Messiah ben Joseph. It's just that's a different, much later
Later.
tradition, rabbinic tradition, that actually is not connected to this.
That is
But
so
it's
interesting.
just it's a Messiah of Aaron and a Messiah of David. So And so it's just their expectation was that in the last days there was going to be a great anointed, like a great high priest and a great king, who were going to usher in the rule of God in the last days. So now they don't.
Which makes
The interesting
sense.
thing, yeah,
If you go back to
the
Genesis,
interesting,
the blessings on Levi and Judah,
yeah, yes,
you know,
right,
those are
yeah,
pretty in line with that.
very much so.
Yeah, and this is
Now,
exactly where I was starting to go with that. Thank you. The two messiahs thing makes me wonder if Jesus and John the Baptist were originally thought this way. John being Aaron, Jesus being David. Like, they were like first cousins or something like that. So technically they
if
would have
New
been
Testament
from like the
believe,
same
yeah,
tribal line. However,
yeah.
there's something there where you hear Jesus talking about like he's Elijah if you can receive it. Right?
Mm,
And he
mhm.
came in the spirit of Elijah, or he's just straight up Elijah if you can receive it. And I find that interesting because he's obviously kind of giving himself a little bit of like, yeah, Elijah's whole job was to come and tell people to repent before the Messiah shows up, making himself, you know, kind of the object of those actions. So
Well, it's good that you went there because I think that has bearing on this particular text. I was just about to say that while we have these two figures in Qumran's messianic expectation, they're almost never they're never actually called Mashiach, right?
hmm,
It's the branch of David, or the prince is the Davidic
mhm.
Messiah, and then the anointed priest is called, I think he's called like the Messiah of Aaron, right? But
Yeah,
or just the
'cause they were
priest.
all
So
Levites.
yeah, but where the word Mashiach is used most frequently in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it's with reference to prophets, the Hebrew prophets. The writing prophets are often identified as Mashiach within this text. And if you think about the expectation of Elijah in the last days within early Jewish expectation, he's the sign working prophet, right?
Mhm.
These are signs of like the ushering in of the messianic age. So I don't know, is that who this is? Is this like a description of Elijah in the last days?
And
So, and
another thing to chew on that I think is important, especially right now, is in this time and place, in this culture, if you're anointed, if you're chosen, it doesn't
mm,
make you magical. You're chosen to do a job or perform a function. Like when they anoint kings, it's to do a job, right? When
yep.
you anoint a prophet, it's to do a job. Um, I hear a lot of people who are rightfully pissed off at the modern state of Israel going, these are God's chosen people. You're chosen because in their mind, they think, oh, that means you think you're better than us. Like, no, being chosen means you have a freaking job to do. You have a
Mhm.
job, an obligation. It's not like, oh, you're magical and you're so much better than everybody. That's not what that has like ever meant.
Do your
So
job.
do your job. Yeah, like if
Yeah,
you're anointed for king,
exactly.
go do the king stuff. Here's a whole list of rules you need to follow. If you're a prophet, go prophesy.
You're
You're
right.
not gonna like it. It's a
That's
pretty
right.
shitty job, but go do
Yeah,
your job. Right. So
yeah, exactly.
yeah, it's frustrating
So
to continually run into that. Um, but
11
oh,
Q Melchizedek, 11Q13 is more
mm,
explicit, I think, in terms of identifying identifying a divine figure in the last days. But it's important to read it carefully. So just from the top of fragment 2 here. And this is it's an exposition on various texts of scripture. So that's what it's doing, is it is expounding on the meaning of a collection of these texts from the Bible concerning what scripture says. In the year of Jubilee, you shall return every one of you to your property. Leviticus 25, verse 13. And what is also written, and this is the manner of the remission. Every creditor shall remit the claim that is held against a neighbor, not exacting it of a neighbor who is a member of the community, because God's remission has been proclaimed. Deuteronomy 15, verse 2. The interpretation is that it applies to the last days and concerns the captives, just as Isaiah said, to proclaim the Jubilee to the captives. Once again, Isaiah 61, verse 1. Then it breaks off. And whose teachers have been hidden and kept secret, even from the inheritance of Melchizedek, but we're not sure what that
Ooh.
is.
Interesting.
That's the Umenachlat Melchizedek. So,
Inheritance, yeah.
right? Yeah. And it breaks off again. Frustratingly, they are the inheritance of Melchizedek, who will return them to what is rightly theirs. He will proclaim to them the Jubilee, thereby releasing them from the debt of all their sins. This word will come in the first, well, where am I? There we are. Okay. This word
Jubilee period
will come in the first week of the Jubilee period that follows 9 Jubilee periods. Then the Day of Atonement shall follow, and the end of the 10th Jubilee period, at the end of the 10th Jubilee period, when he shall atone for all the sons of light and the people who are predestined to Melchizedek. So I'm going to pause there for a sec, because people get caught up in this atonement language. And when Christians read this, invariably, they're always thinking of self-sacrifice.
Yeah. Also, maybe not for now, but how do they know that's B'nai or their sons of light?
They don't, right?
Tells me that
that's based on, it's not actually there. So that, I mean, you can see it here, right? So it's not a very big space. So there's limits on what you can stick in here. It's a good bet. By virtue of that, there's not a lot of things that you can stick in there that are going to fit. But also, this is a commonly recurring term that the writers and the collectors of the Dead Sea Scrolls use to identify themselves. So I think it's probably right, but it's a good, it's good that you're pointing this out, right? Like there is uncertainty with respect to a lot of what's in the gaps of these.
Because I mean, look, just having some fun here. Because there's not a lot of space, it could plausibly just as easily be B'nai Levi.
Yeah. Yes.
That's a short. Right? That's a short word. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'm not terribly upset that that's B'nai Or, because that fits with a lot of the other contemporary literature. I'm just like, okay, little.
So I'll just say that. Yeah, and because this is a contextual question too, right? Trying to fill in where this text fits with lots of the other literature that we have. I'll just say that B'nai Levi is not especially common in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's much more common in the Aramaic texts. So if this was an Aramaic text, I think B'nai Levi would probably be almost a given. But because it's written in Hebrew, it's like, well, less certain. That's for sure. So, okay. So the atonement for the sons of light and the people who are predestined to Melchizedek. So picking this up in line 9. For this is the time decreed for the year of Melchizedek's favor, Isaiah 61:2. And this is really interesting because do you
Melchizedek's
know?
favor?
Yeah,
Huh.
it's not
Okay.
Yahweh's. Isaiah 61:2 says this is what's decreed for the year of Yahweh's favor. And
I
here
would
we
like
have
to submit that Melchizedek is being understood as synonymous with God and potentially picking up on a much more ancient tradition that in a time where people physically could interact with their gods, you know,
yeah.
because I mean, how many times is God described as a king? God is righteous, God is like above all the other kings, King of kings, blah, blah, blah. Who
The
better?
righteous king.
Who better?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
many people are like, who is this person? What if it's God? And then it just took on all these other meanings over time
Yeah.
because of cultural influence. Because if they're changing it right there, to me, that's telling me that's who they think that is.
Yep. I think that's probable. And there's some Daniel 7 stuff going on. Not directly, but I think some Daniel 7 stuff going on generally in the apocalyptic expectation of these people,
because when Abraham paid tithes, he paid them to, Melchizedek.
Yep.
Later on, when you get the laws about sacrifices, you give a tenth of your stuff to the priest so that they can have like an inheritance and whatever, which is making me think, did this actually say B'nai Levi? Because those people don't get an inheritance in the land. They don't get to like make their own food. They get a tenth of what people bring them.
Yeah.
Predestined to Melchizedek, because remember when God takes the people out of Egypt and he says, "You're a kingdom of priests to me, give me your firstborn." And later on he goes, "JK, just give me the Levites."
Right, yeah. No, that's a good point.
There might be something to pick up on here.
Might be. So this is okay. So this is the time decreed for the year of Melchizedek's favor and for his hosts together. And that's Sabaoth, which is again a title that's usually assigned to Yahweh. For his hosts together with the holy ones of God. This is where am I? Line 9 here. Right. So this is Kadoshei El. The holy ones of El. For a kingdom of judgment, just as it is written concerning him in the songs of David, who said, "An Elohim has taken his place in the council of El." In the midst of the divine beings, in the midst of the Elohim, he holds judgment. Scripture also says of him, over it, take your seat in the highest heaven, and Elohim will judge the peoples. Concerning what Scripture says, yeah,
picking up on this thread, remember, was it last week where you were talking to me about how in a city, the highest point is typically where you build the king's palace. And the king is the one who gets the highest like position, not just because it's like practically easily defensible, but that idea parallels the idea that gods are up in the higher places, right? So righteous king being compared here to the Psalm 82 where Yahweh goes in and deposes the divine council because they're dropping the ball on their jobs. And he's like, you know what? You were gods, but like you just aren't getting it done. Take
You
an L,
suck
you're
at it.
dying like mortals. Suck it. Look
Yeah.
at me. I am the L now. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Hmm.
yeah, it's revealing, concerning what the scripture says. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? That's also from Psalm 82. The interpretation applies to Belial and the spirits predestined to him, because all of them have rebelled, turning from God's precepts, and so becoming utterly wicked. Therefore, Melchizedek will thoroughly prosecute the vengeance required by God's statutes. In that day, he will deliver them from the power of Belial and from the power of all the spirits predestined to him. Allied with him will be all the righteous divine beings. This is actually the where is it here? What line is this?
Oh,
Shoot, I
aesthetic.
just lost it.
Oh, that's so weird.
Yeah, it is weird. So it's just before line 15, yeah. This is Kol B'nai Al, right? Kol Elai Hatzedek, yeah. All the all the gods, all the righteous gods. This visitation is on the day of salvation that he has decreed through Isaiah the prophet concerning all the captives, inasmuch as scripture says, how beautiful on the mountains are the feet of the messenger who announces peace, who brings good news, who announces salvation, who says to Zion, your Elohim reigns. Isaiah 52:7. This scripture's interpretation, the mountains are the prophets. They who were sent to proclaim God's truth and to prophesy to all Israel, and the messenger is the Mashiach of the Spirit.
Why did they translate it anointed there and not Messiah? See, this is my problem, guys.
Well, also, to be clear, there's 3 of them, right, who translated it. So they, I suspect it was different. I used to have the hard copy, which indicated who translated what text, but I suspect it was. If I were to guess, I would say that Mike Wise is the culprit behind capitalizing Messiah, and one of the other 2 probably did this one. But anyways, the messenger is the anointed of the Spirit, of whom Daniel spoke. After 62 weeks, the anointed one shall be cut off. Importantly, this whole text is missing.
Yeah, that's gonna say this one there.
So it is reconstructed on the basis of what follows, or on the basis of the fact that it comes from Daniel. There's only 2 places in the entire book of Daniel where Mashiach appears, in 926 and then 927. So it's either the Mashiach who is cut off, or it's the Mashiach who rules, who rises up. So one of the things I don't particularly like about this particular translation too is that they've gone with the second option. I actually think it's the Messiah who rises up. It fits physically, it fits better. It fits the space better. So, but I have a whole video about that in my Richard Carrier series.
It's interesting to me that there's a messenger who is anointed of the Spirit, a messenger who's anointed, and it says, this messenger brings good news, and, it quotes from Isaiah, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, the day of vengeance, to comfort those who mourn.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me, that the Mashiach, the anointed of the Spirit, is not God. It's a person, a messenger.
Yeah.
And I'm like, uh-oh, Islam just entered the chat going, he's a prophet. He's like a messenger. Jesus isn't like God. He's just a messenger. Yeah, like that's interesting to me.
Look what he's doing too, right? He is to instruct them about all the periods of history for eternity and in the statutes of the truth. So he's a teacher, right? Which is something that priests did typically. But you could apply that as well to prophets. But but this is, I think, within this text, I think that this is a separate figure from Melchizedek.
Yeah.
Melchizedek is not the Messiah in this text. Melchizedek is a god. It's difficult, right? Because this is full on Canaanite pantheon kind of language that we see also at work in a text like Daniel 7 with the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven in the court of El, right? This is part of this heritage, and I think you're right on the nose, like when you talked about this being part of this earlier tradition, right? Where there was an early form of this messianic expectation, which was very comfortably at home within this old Canaanite religious pantheon kind of perspective of the heavens. So I think there's probably a distinction in this text, as there is in Daniel 7, between El, the high god El, and the Elohim in the Council of El, who in Psalm 82 is Yahweh. In Daniel chapter 7, it's the Son of Man. In this scroll, it's Melchizedek, right? But you're probably I think you're probably right. These are all with reference to the same figure. But importantly, and I'll just repeat that, it's not the Messiah. It is this complicated picture of divine beings in the Messianic age. But it's not the Messiah.
Let me show you something right here. Look at verse 23. By the judgment of God, just as written concerning him, and most of that's cut off except for the last part of the word Sion. And I went and looked up the reference, and that is saying how welcome on the mountains are the footsteps of the messenger, which is something they quoted earlier. But it says announcing victory, and then it says, I don't like this translation. JPS, what are you doing? Shua Omer Letzion Malach Elo Heicha. Heich. Sorry. Haich. Good grief. Masoretes. Your Elo Haich. Your El, your God. Malach reigns. So this is something like the messenger isn't a divine being. It's telling you about a divine ruler, king, whatever. I think it's telling you about the Melchizedek.
I got distracted for a second. Say that last sentence again.
Yeah, so if their quote is of 52:7, like Isaiah 52:7 here.
Yeah.
By the judgment of God just written concerning him, it says, Omer Letzion, Malach Elohai. So it's who's the king of Sion? God? I mean, Zion is that poetical, idealized version of Jerusalem. That is said to be where God's presence dwells, right? And God is the righteous king in their mind. He's the only king that is the rightful ruler of that location, and I guess, you know, by extension, the planet. But
Well, that's
I'm leaning heavily into this idea that actually Melchizedek is a possibly ancient idea or title or maybe
for
position of
God.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you look at Psalm 110, right? It's not abundantly clear that it's even meant there as a name or as
A title.
my king
vocation.
is righteous, right? It's yeah. So but yeah, I think and this is stuff this gets into I mention it all the time. I promise I'm going to do it. I kind of have the summer sort of slated to work on the two powers
Dude,
video.
verse
So
25, it quotes the end of that. Elohai, your God,
mhm.
which is funny. They're just calling it divine being. Just say God. Just say it. And then it says Elohai is Melchizedek, who will deliver them from probably the hand of Belial. So maybe this is going
Yep.
back to the whole Yahweh fighting Baal thing.
Yeah. It's like I said, it's got these deep, old, like Canaanite pantheon undertones to it that are being carried forward into the 2nd century BCE. But like people misunderstand messianic expectation in early Judaism. It was varied and it was rich. And it wasn't just like there was this one guy who was going to come and deliver Israel from the Romans, and it wasn't like it was just about the kingdom of God being ushered in the last days. There's a whole cast of characters involved here. Some of them are humans, and some of them are gods. So
And every
that's
king has an emissary. Whenever they're going a place, they say, "Hey, everybody, the king's about to show up. It's coming. He's about to be
That's true.
here. Shape up.
The so-called
Get
forerunner.
your shit together."
Yeah. So,
Yeah. So I don't know. There's this
So
idea. I think, Vadim said it. Maybe they saw God as an overlord, but the actual king, like the one physically in meat space, is the one who's actually here and did the ruling pushing. Like, listen,
yeah.
in the ancient period and somewhat into the modern period, the king or the queen is seen as kind of a stand-in for the god or gods of the region. And like in Egypt, it was extremely hyper literal. They were not an avatar necessarily of the god, but they were doing the function of the god, but here on the earth, here in like physical space. So I have to wonder if that idea is also getting play here. That the divine king is supposed to be like a representation.
Right.
Oh, how would Dan McClellan say it? They're the divine image. They're manifesting the presence of the god.
Entheost, I think is the term I think he uses that term. Others use that term. But and maybe that's part of this too, right? It just people get fixated on they got on their monotheism hobby horse and they try to read all this stuff through that lens, and then their brains break and they're like, oh, it's got to be Jesus, right? Because
God was walking with them in the afternoon. Well, that was an angel, or
Yeah.
that was just pre-incarnate Jesus, or
Yeah,
like
no.
the explode scanner style. I'm like,
Yeah.
that was God. That was meant to be God, physically walking with them in the garden.
But yeah.
Goodness gracious.
So yeah, well, but it's late, and I'm yeah, it's there's still like 120 people watching it, which is pretty great considering how late it is. There is no playing Star Trek Endurance over at Dapper's channel tonight. So and there's nobody streaming, after this either. So, this is just kind of it. It probably means I'm going to end up watching the now disgraced Egyptologist because I hate myself.
What if
Um,
instead, just a suggestion, we watched another VHS movie?
I'm picking the movie this time, but maybe we should do that.
Dang it!
And I would love to watch VHS, but you know what? I'm dying to watch Good Boy.
Good Boy.
I'm talking about that for like
Well,
a
it's on
month.
Shudder, so
Yes. I'm thinking I think that sounds like a great idea.
make sure
I'll have to
Dagon watches it with you, because this is right up
Yeah.
his alley.
It will be, yes. All right. So I think we got one more super chat. Oh,
Yes.
Chuck wants to know what it all means. You come here for meaning?
You coming for meaning? Yeah. The only thing I'm sure the Qumran community did is that they're literally flew for the high. Oh, it's whore life. Never beaten that charges on that one. Trick clam towed for 5. My monotheistic hobby horse broke. Now I just have
Henotheistic stick.
Good.
Hold on to that. You know what Dagon would do with that henotheistic stick if he ever got his
Chew the
sights
stick.
on it? He would
Bite it.
Yeah. So we're gonna be on with Dapper tomorrow at noon Pacific, noon
Eastern.
Arizona time, because that's where he is, and 3:00 Eastern. To look at more King James only nonsense, which is fun.
I refuse
And then it's
to believe that those guys are not pros. I can't handle it.
it's wild.
It will
right?
destroy my sanity to think that there are legitimately people out there with their whole chest saying that the divine language of creation was the 1611 King James English.
Yeah.
I can't.
So, yeah. So that's and then there's Budget Scripture Saturday tomorrow night, 7:00 Pacific, 10:00 Eastern. I believe Dr. Tapioca Weasel will be back, but Vish is free to hop on too. So
I'll be in the batter's box just in case.
Nice. Yeah. So we got you covered, guys. Oh, I do want to make a couple of announcements though too for things that are upcoming next week. I've already picked out which is new. This doesn't always happen, but I've already picked out what we're doing next week, and the reason why it's next week is because this video from Frank Turek dropped literally hours before this stream, but he brought Jeremiah J. Johnston back today to talk about the resurrection of Jesus, and I just can't leave that alone. So we'll be looking at that next week, and then I think it's still 3 weeks away. My birthday is 3 weeks away for the 3rd year in a row for my birthday stream this year, and I'm not sure if we'll do it on my birthday or if we'll do it on the Friday right after my birthday. But for the last 2 years, we have looked at PhD dissertations. The first one we did, we looked at Jeremiah J. Johnston's, and then last year I presented mine. This year I will have another one. I'm still working it out, but I will try actually and have a special guest on to talk about their PhD dissertation, which I think will be really exciting. So that's coming up. No, I have to confirm it first. I'd hate to announce what I have in mind, and then for him to go, oh, I can't do it. So I'll look for that. Thursday this week on Kitty Breed.
Busted.
Did you
I think it exists. Prove me wrong.
So this week on Kitty Breed on Thursday night, Dr. Jordan Jones from Bible and Archaeology will be joining me, and we will be we finished Joshua. So unfortunately for him, he doesn't get to read Joshua, but we'll find something new for him to read. So that's a good idea though. We when
Hey,
maybe
that's a
maybe
good one.
next year. Not Joel. But maybe next year. This is something we have to do. So yeah, I like that idea. But I think that's it for us. Did we get oh yeah, we did get that one. Okay. So finding an outro here as I do. Oh, hey, there we go. All right. So, as always, everyone, it's the weekend. It is Pesach. It is Good Friday, and Sunday's coming. See what I did there? So, be good. Stay safe.
Be
And
excellent to each other.
as always, Ha Tikva.